You are listening to Tomorrow's Legends with Havoc and Shadowcat. They ought to be talking about X-Men 97, led by me, Magneto. But I suppose it's acceptable if they deign to speak of some other people.
"30 years ago, one of the greatest animated series of all time went off the air. But now it's returning to our screens, and the mutants will rise again. X-Men 97 continues the story of Wolverine, Rogue, Storm, Cyclops, Jean Grey, and more as they try to move forward from the loss of their leader, Professor Charles Xavier. Join Havoc and Shadowcat on this new adventure as they bring you the stories of X-Men 97. This is Tomorrow's Legends.
Oh, I love our new Magneto intro.
I do too. It's full of the epicness you'd expect from Magneto.
Exactly, and how fitting is it with these last couple episodes and how center he is of everything going on.
Very fitting, very fitting. He's, it sounds like he might come with an asteroid and might ask us to join him. You don't ever know.
Maybe. Well, welcome, fellow mutants, to X-Men 97. OMG. I don't know where to even start after the shocking, intense second part to Tolerance is Extinction. Just when you thought they can't possibly go any farther with what they're doing and showing us, they push it not just a little, but way farther. The penultimate episode of the season is absolutely jaw-dropping, and we're here to try and talk about it. I am still in a bit of shock. Havoc.
And come on, Magneto. I just finished upgrading my computer, and now you decide to shut off the power? I'm Shadowcat.
Yeah. We got a tiny bit of news. Let's get into some news.
We do.
We interrupt this podcast for a special report.
What do we have this week?
Yeah, like you said, just a small bit. But according to an article from IndieWire, and then I backed it up by a report from filmmusicreporter.com, the X-Men 97 score that's composed by the Newton Brothers, it should be available on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you stream your music. It should be available on May 24th. So we will be getting that soundtrack.
Very cool. So there's got to be more to it than just the opening theme. There's got to be like soundtrack music from all the episodes and stuff.
Yes, yeah, everything that I've already raved about in certain episodes, and I think I talk about the music in this episode later on, but all of those soundtrack themes, I know Storm has a theme, I'm pretty sure Cyclops and Jean have a theme, all of that, we should be able to get all of that.
We've got to get it, because maybe I can use a little bit on the show here. We'll see. Purchase it. So is there a date? Oh, May 24th, you said. Okay.
Yeah, May 24th. So it should be just a week and a couple days after the finale.
And you know where that roughly is? We should roughly be finding out if you and me got selected for the X-Men Hotel by then.
Yes. Yes, we should.
the bed and breakfast in Xavier's mansion. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I did apply, so we'll see. I totally pumped it up there. Yeah, I cover at X-Men on the podcast, and we've been talking about it, and so hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I know. That whole application process, it was like, write an essay, answer all of these questions, tell us all about you.
Yeah.
I was like, what is this?
I guess they only want very true fans to show up there, I guess. I don't know.
But it would work out, because I know that the dates that we picked, I'm actually going to be in New York City for a work project on the 13th.
Okay.
So if it works out, then I'll just stay there and then just head over to Westchester the next day.
Yeah.
So it'd be really nice if that were to happen.
That would be very cool. And I already checked into flights. It's going to cost me a couple $100 to get a flight over there, but whatever. It'll be a quick holiday and just something fun to do. Yes, that would be very, very cool. And I know you guys can't see us right now, but I am going full Rogue tonight. I'm wearing my newest Rogue t-shirt that I got at the expo. It is so very hard to find anything Rogue other than action figures, but to find a t-shirt or a hoodie or anything like that, she's one of the characters that they just don't make stuff. Like, there's 1,000 Wolverines and Nightcrawlers even, and Jean Grey, but Rogue, they just don't make stuff of Rogue that you can wear. I mean, even finding her leather jacket, you can't even find that.
Yeah,
but
I've tried.
Yeah, so. But I did find one. It's a lot more green than I usually wear, but whatever. Don't care.
It's fine. I wore my Kitty Pride shirt last week. Could have had one.
Yeah.
And that's like the only shirt I've ever seen of like Shadowcat out there. So
See?
gotta go find or make some more.
Gotta take care of these shirts because they're
Yes.
hard to find.
Yes.
Well, let's get into our show after we remind you that you are listening to the Cybercast Network, where there's a lot of shows covering some of your favorite topics. Tomorrow's Legends right now is talking about X-Men, and they're also covering the Tomorrow People, which is a fun show. We're really getting into that one. And then Superman and Lois is coming up later this fall. They should be announcing soon when the premiere actually is. And then dive into DC with Silver Fox and the Green Butterfly. That covers all your DC goodness. They have got a new show that they're covering, the Dead Boy Detectives, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be covering that in, I think, 3 parts. So check that out if you're liking that show. It's getting some pretty good reviews. And then the Mandalore podcast just wrapped the Bad Batch Season 3 and the series. It was an epic, dramatic finish. So check the Mandalore out because they will be moving on to the Acolyte, which starts soon, just in a couple weeks. There you go. Lots to get into on the network here. Now we're going to get into our overall impressions and ratings.
Like, what is it with guys and explosions anyway?
Okay. I thought I was rating it high last time, and this one just keeps edging up a little bit more. So 9.5 shocking moments. I am speechless. Literally, jaw to the floor, speechless. This simple little cartoon is the most dramatic, serious, and epic show on TV right now. The last 40 years of X-Men stories, all that history is coming to a head in this series. Everything has led to these moments. And if you've been a fan of X-Men as long as I have, you can feel the weight of it all. They are going for broke and leaving no stone unturned when it comes to all the things we have ever wondered about and the questions we've always asked. Will they ever cross a certain line? Like Wolverine actually running someone through with his claws finally? Or Magneto, can he just rip Wolverine apart because he's got a metal skeleton? I'm simply blown away by this episode and everything they did.
Yeah. And I know I'm coming in actually a little lower, which is a surprise. But I'm going with 8 comic costume changes. Well, there were some...
You got some explaining to do.
I know, and I'll be explaining it throughout the entire discussion. But while there's some incredible action and teamwork sequences in this episode, and I love seeing the new suits, and I know we'll talk about that later, the more I watch this episode, the more some things started to actually kind of break down for me. And some things started to not make quite sense in the plotline. So... I don't know if it's because I know some of the certain comic storylines pretty well, and I feel like I wasn't getting a surprise when some of them popped up. And certain choices, to me, felt like they were happening just to get to those specific moments. I still enjoyed it a lot, but just some of those things that were starting to break down, just made me go lower on the episode after my initial watch. But we'll talk through all of it. I will explain myself.
You better. I expected at least a 9.5 this week. Come on. After last week.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll get into it. We got a lot of points, so settle in, buckle up, because we're getting on the Blackbird, and we're not coming back for a while. Let's get into the show.
My daddy always said 2's company and 3's an eavesdropper.
All right. Well, opening credits. Storm is back in the main sequence, and that's really all I noticed. But yay, she's back.
Yes, she is. And there was one other little blink and you'll miss it change. But in one of the final shots, when the X-Men and the Brotherhood are all running at each other and there's the humans in the middle, the humans in the middle have now all been turned into Prime Sentinels in the intro.
Oh, I did not notice.
Mm-hmm.
That's creepy.
And they're being chased by bigger Sentinels. So
oh my gosh.
It's kind of funny.
Okay.
But yeah, no new scenes, no anything like that. So those were the only changes.
I think they've given us everything that they wanted to show us, so yeah, I'm gonna have to watch that for the Sentinels. That's kind of funny. All right, well, let's go right to where the show starts off, and that is the morning after last week. So Charles is waking up in his old bedroom with all the damage around him. Like, I'm surprised his bedroom was still standing, but
yeah,
he gets out of bed and he's just jumps into his old wheelchair. Like, he arrived in his suit that allowed him to walk why wouldn't he keep using the Shi'ar tech to help him walk and get around and be a little more, I don't want to say useful, but a little more effective, like a little more mobile while he's here on Earth?
Well, I'm not sure that he actually came back in it, because he was wearing the spacesuit, the one that kind of looks like a bug.
Oh, okay, maybe that's what I'm thinking.
So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if he was in the armor that he had. And we saw Deathbird damage it in Life Death Part 2. She, like, slashes at the leg, and he ends up not working. So, you know, maybe it's still damaged, or it just doesn't work, or he just chose not to. I know that I'll reference the Fatal Attractions comic book storyline a lot throughout this episode. But in that one, Xavier did actually use his Shi'ar suit in that storyline, so it's interesting that he didn't keep it here, because so much was based off of that comic book.
Okay. Well, it makes me wonder then, because if he arrived and he kind of... I thought he stood up when the hatch for the ship opened up. I thought he stood up. Maybe he didn't, but if he wasn't able to walk, I mean, Logan was right there, so maybe Logan had to come pick him up and carry him into the house, I'm assuming.
It's probably what happened, because he was still sitting when he did the To Me My X-Men last week.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we also see that yellow hover chair, his yellow hover wheelchair, from the original cartoon in his room. It's damaged, but that was kind of a nice callback, seeing that there at the very beginning.
Yeah, because he wipes off the dirt so he can see his reflection. Because for a moment there, I thought that's his new one. It's just covered in dust from all the destruction.
Yeah.
So, because moments later, he's in it again, gliding around. I'm like, wait a second, I thought the thing was damaged.
Yeah, I think they had a second one when they go to Muir Island, but right here they don't.
Okay. Well, continuing on with the morning after, we go from that to seeing Magneto standing on the coastline somewhere, contemplating what he must do. And he, like you could see there, he was just sitting there, he was thinking, and he kind of takes a big sigh, and he puts on his helmet, and he lifts something up out of the water, which I'm assuming is the ocean. What was it that rose from the ocean depths? Like, was it just a chunk of earth, or was that like a bunch of metal that he gathered together? Like, it was a massive chunk of land, is what it looked like.
Yeah, so he's back in his old uniform too.
That too.
So everyone's changing.
Yeah.
And when he rises from the ocean, that is Asteroid M.
I thought Asteroid M was already up in space, though.
No,
because this was just a small piece. It wasn't that big.
Well, at the end of the Sanctuary episodes from the original series, which is when they introduce Asteroid M, he plunges it into the ocean at the very end, so no one else can use it.
Oh, gosh, I forget all about that. Okay.
So he's now raising it. I guess he was just keeping it safe under the ocean. But for a split second, I did think that it was possibly the Citadel that he uses in Uncanny X-Men number 150. Because in that, he literally uses a bunch of the metal and like an underwater building that was already there, and he rose that to be above ground to create a Citadel. And that's the storyline from that. Is what happens in that one is what launches him to actually join the X-Men and lead the X-Men team in the comics. Right. So for a second I thought that's what was happening, but yeah, it's Asteroid M.
Okay, well that makes sense. And maybe so, because it just didn't look very big when it came out of the water, but maybe it was way out there. From his perspective, It was way out there. Okay. Yeah,
I think they were hiding like the big reveal of it until the scene by the lake, which we'll get to.
Okay, cool. All right, well that's good to know. Well, continuing on, the Sentinels, they're not laying around. Like I thought once the EMP went off, all their bodies would just collapse and there'd just be a bunch of dead Sentinels laying all over the earth, but they're not. They're actually frozen in place. Like they shut down and just seized up. Wherever they were, whatever they were doing, they just seized up and basically froze in place, which I thought was really kind of strange.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure last episode when he does do the MP, we see him falling out of the sky and started to kind of lay around too at the mansion. So seeing them frozen was a little weird, but it did make for a nice creepy setting.
Well, it made me think of what we've seen in some other movies when you go to the nuclear testing grounds in the United States, and there's just all the mannequins everywhere. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what it made me think of. I was like, ooh, that's just creepy.
Yeah.
And then we go from that scene to Bastion walking amongst them, carrying his mom, Sentinel mom, and he's crying over her. So he can cry. He's he looks more human than they ever did, but he's crying and he's carrying his robot mom, and to me it's very weird to me looking at your mom, but she's now an android, a sentinel, and it just has that real creepy factor to it, and then just for him to be crying and feeling something over that, I don't know, I felt it was a very, very odd scene, and it made me, I couldn't find the emotion for it. I couldn't understand why he's crying over a dead machine, but I guess because he's machine and she's machine, I don't know, it was weird. It was just a really, really weird scene.
Yeah. And if you notice when he lasered in her bed later, she's also crying. There's tears running down from her eyes too, which is an interesting little detail, but still weird. But yeah, the whole scene was giving very like that creepy serial killer vibes, like Norman Bates-esque from Psycho when he keeps his mom body. Like it was giving that.
Yeah, like he keeps her sitting in the rocking chair in the window. Yeah. So anytime that someone goes by the house, you see her silhouette in the window. Like, oh my god. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Very, very creepy. Ugh. So this whole morning sequence, like it was just cut together. You just went from scene to scene to scene, and it's just kind of showing you everything, the aftermath of what once the battle was over. So we move on to Jubilee and Sunspot, and they're being chased down the streets by an angry mob, and they get cornered into a back alley. And you're just thinking, uh-oh. Are they going to use their powers to defend themselves? What's going to happen here?
All right. And I know at the end of last week's episode, I was like, well, you had to explain to me, because I was like, oh, they got away, but they were collared, and I forgot the order of the scenes, and we were speculating, I was like, oh no, like they're going to get taken to Bastion or something bad is going to happen, and that didn't. But guessing the EMP just disabled their collars and the Sentinels that had captured them, so they escaped. So that's good that nothing else bad happened to them.
Because you were speculating,
I know. Yeah. So yeah, but I kind of does call back, and we were like, are we going to see them have to attack this mob to get out of there? But then who shows up?
Storm and Forge fly in. She starts a little thunderstorm, and they're up on the rooftop there, looking down at the people, and the people take off. And then they jump down into the alley with Jubilee and Sunspot. And I looked at this and I wait a second, Forge has jets coming out of his feet. So is he? Because the only mechanical part we see on him is kind of up around his thigh, but it must be his boots then or something that have little, rocket jets in them.
Well, it's his whole leg on that side. I think it's his right leg.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure the jets he built into the prosthetic leg. So that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But because I think it was just the one.
It was just the one, which is also strange. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess he wanted to fly too.
Yeah.
Or Jubilee's left out of flying even more.
But when they land on the ground, I have to take it. I'm gonna shove my foot in my mouth for one moment here. When Storm lands, she looked damn sexy in that hand on hip and the hip cocked to the side kind of pose that she had. Her hair flowing around her black outfit. She looked great, and that outfit looked really good on her there. I've
already said I'm a fan of that outfit too.
Yeah, it was a pose though.
Yeah, it was a pose for you, but very 80s. I just love the 80s stuff because that's what I grew up reading. So
yeah, totally. So good shot.
And I know I said this and I already mentioned it, but I say it every week. The music, incredible. During this entire scene, and then when, Storm makes the storm and comes down, like, you hear her theme playing really prominently, and the music was just super powerful in this episode.
Every time, yeah. Every scene, when they're trying to get you to feel something, the right music comes in to emphasize that emotion.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really,
I cannot
really
wait
good.
to listen to all of it on repeat when it comes out.
I know, definitely. You're going to have to remind me. You said May 24th, right?
May 24th, hopefully.
Yeah. I am writing a note, and I will go get that right away. All right, so what I'm going to start differentiating this show from all the others is there's so much happening in X-Men, and we have our favorite scenes, but I'm finding that there's like 6 or 7 favorite scenes in every single episode, and I just don't want to go through our show without getting to hear them again. So I'm going to just start playing the clips throughout our discussion so that we can talk about what we just heard and kind of relive that emotion. And I think it'll really enhance our discussion, because we're going to hear it and then we're going to be like, oh yeah, and get right into the moment we're talking about. So the first one in this episode is when Charles and Scott, Professor X and Cyclops, they're finally talking in the morning, and Charles is trying to explain to Scott his decisions about wanting them to have a life, but Scott won't accept it. He's pretty upset with Charles for everything that has happened. So I'm going to play the clip, and then we'll get into the discussion.
The world is going to end in 12 hours, so you two better make this fast.
Magneto, sir? Really? What did you expect was going to happen when you tossed him to school?
I wanted you two to be free, to finally be together, to have a family, a child like Nathan.
The choice should have been ours.
I wanted to spare you the weight of your loyalty to me. You, both of you, have done everything I have asked since you were teenagers. You were my first students, and you graduated a long time ago.
And what would freedom have gotten us? I still would have had to send Nathan to the future. I'd still be pulled into dealing with Bastion or Magneto or whoever else threatened the world. No matter what, I'll always end up here. Don't you know that?
That was my fear. From the moment I first met you, that you would help build a world where mutants could live however they wish, but that you would never allow yourself to enjoy it. Perhaps that was a mistake, because just like you, I'm right back here.
Yeah. So everybody's pissed at Charles. They're not being very welcome home with open arms type of attitude towards him. It's very, we're upset. Everything that has happened because of you leaving, and you didn't come back in time. Like, it's just a big mess. And that you want to feel bad for Charles, because this is his family. These are his children, and he did everything to give them a good life. You know, he did his best, but they're not happy right now with what has happened.
Yeah.
And he's feeling it.
And you know what? I enjoyed that it wasn't like a super warm welcome back. That it wasn't just like, yay, Professor X, you're gonna fix everything. Considering everything that they've gone through since he's been gone, that the X-Men have watch experience, they've had all these their beliefs challenged, all of these things happening. Yep. So I was glad. I know Charles is trying to make right, trying to figure out if he made the right decision or not with a lot of things, but I was glad. And you know, he's talking about why he put Magneto in charge instead of like Scott, because he wanted to give Scott and Jean the opportunity to go have a family, like he says. Yep. But Scott's upset because on one hand it really wasn't, you know, he really didn't give him a choice. He just made the decision for him, and also out of the blue, like, you know, didn't say anything to Scott beforehand or anything of that nature. You know, that Scott would always end back up at the Institute. You know, Xavier feared that Scott would always be working to build that better future where mutants could live however they please, but that he or Jean and probably the rest of the X-Men would never let themselves be a part of it. And, you know, it ends with that, him raising a hand towards Scott and Scott just walking away.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, he came back at the worst of times, too. I mean,
yes, he did.
Everything is hitting the fan right now, so there's a lot of emotions flying around, and they're dealing with all of that. So right now, it's easy to let Professor X have it, because you've got all this stuff boiling up inside, and you need to blame somebody. And they're throwing it at Professor X right now.
Mm-hmm. It's okay. There's going to be a lot of strong emotions, as we will continue to see. And then we also get Storm and Forge coming back to the mansion, making their way there. And we see Jean super excited to see Storm, which is great. And then Forge and Beast kind of have a little buddy-buddy moment so they can be science bros together this episode.
Yep. I thought I had that later in the notes, so I was talking about the two of them, but I guess this in chronological order, this is when they meet up. So it was nice to see how happy Jean was to see that Storm got her powers back, and you know, they're quite happy. You forget how tight those two are. They're really, really close.
Yeah, and I think it was one of those instances too where we're seeing a little bit of, Madeline's memories coming through with Jean and Storm there as well. We'll see a little bit later that, Jean is talking about how Madeline is still with her because she's probably now accepted a lot of Madeline's memories as her own. So just a cute moment between the two of them that'll come back later.
Yeah.
And we also get this moment with Forge explaining that his prosthetics didn't get shut down by the EMP because he made this electrostatic detector for them a while back, and so he wasn't affected. And I kept thinking that was going to come back up, that he was going to apply that to some tech they were building, stop Bastion or whatnot, but it never did. So
no, but it was kind of fun to see it. Like Beast was like, "Whoa, how come that still works?" Tink, 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 and he's tapping on it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they're having a little team session there, and they're kind of planning their next move and plotting things out. And Cyclops splits them into teams. He's a Team Gold and Team Blue. And I thought, wait a second, that's from the comics. That kind of started happening right after I stopped buying and reading comics. And I remember there being Team Red and Team Blue, and I went into the store and I was like, I don't want to buy 2 books. I don't want this is why I quit. I make $4 an hour. I can't buy 25 comics every payday. But that's where it's from, right? The Team Blue and Team Gold. Okay.
Yep. Through I think about mid-90s is when they kind of started the Blue and Gold,
right.
And they've used that on and off since. They've had Blue Gold teams. Sometimes they have the X-Men Red team. They have different various things. So we have Cyclops leading the Blue team here, which is how he started out in the comics, and then Storm and Jean leading Gold, which is also the same as the comics there.
Right. Okay. Good to know. In this little team session, little powwow, we see that Sunspot gets a uniform, and I thought, wait a second, he's suddenly an X-Man? No train. Yeah, we saw him in the Danger Room a little bit with Jubilee, but there's no initiation, there's no graduation, there's no training. He's just suddenly, hey, I'm part of the team, here's my uniform, let's go.
Yeah. Well, he is in the New Mutants, their training uniform, just that black and gold.
That's right. Right. Yep.
It's really not like I've graduated onto the X-Men team uniform, it's their training one. He does mention that he's been doing some Danger Room training off screen, but we've never seen it. And I assume for this mission, they're just going hey, we need all hands on deck. Anyone who is available.
Everybody we got, yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely wouldn't call him a full X-Men by any means yet at this point.
Right.
I think that's potentially a nod to maybe a New Mutants team is going to start up here soon after this.
How cool
I would
would that
enjoy
be?
that.
Yeah.
I would enjoy that a lot.
It'd be neat to see. But just a funny point to pick at here, if he has a suit and he bursts into radiation fire, is the suit already pre-made to suit whatever abilities people have so that it doesn't burn up?
Technically, yes. I mean, sort of. I mean, it's a little bit of comic book hand wavy.
Yeah.
But they do mention time and time again that the suits are fire resistant and fireproof.
Okay.
And, have thermal temperature control and stuff. So if they're in a situation where it's really hot, they get cold. They have cooling, and if they're really cold, they have heat, so that they don't have to keep having parkas or all of those different things. They can just stay in those uniforms. So they have mentioned that, but other times, if he bursts into flames, there goes clothes. So
yeah,
but they're not going to do that in the show.
Of course, it's all comic book convenience that everything just works, because otherwise it's silly. Yeah.
Yeah, he has just another side note, he hasn't called himself, or no one has called him Sunspot yet on screen. So I wonder if he's going to get the name at some point. We'll see a character naming him, or he'll name himself.
Right, that's a good point.
So I know we keep calling him that, but no one has called him Sunspot yet in the show.
No. Yeah, it's just Roberto. Okay. Well, let's move on to Rogue, my nearest and dearest. She is finally waking up. And she seems okay. Just a bad headache. And I love that Nightcrawler is sitting in the chair watching over her and just waiting. And when she wakes up, he's so happy, he teleports across the bedroom to her. Instead of taking the 3 steps, he teleports right to her. He's so happy to see that she's finally up and around. And I just love that little moment, brother and sister. And she's doing okay. But her immediate thought is of Remy. She doesn't realize how much she's missed. The last memories in her head are basically what happened, where Remy's gone and a few, and Trask. Those are the things that she mentions. It's like, wow, that kind of made you realize, boy, she missed a lot.
Right. Yeah, because Nightcrawler tells her that Trask is still alive. And, he's about to say, and so is, when she's like, Remy, Gambit, like, hopefully it's him, but, we know he's referencing Magneto, and then it's kind of sad all over again.
Yes, exactly. Poor Rogue. Because she missed the funeral. She probably doesn't even know that happened. And
well, no, she was running around being Rogue.
Yes.
And punching the military bases and things.
Well, she probably knew the funeral was happening. She just didn't want to be there. Yeah. But here's the thing. Like, when she wakes up and she says, oh, I just got a bad headache, it doesn't seem like there's anything wrong with her that we were all worried about and going, oh my God, lost time, what's happening here? It just appears that she got hit so hard that she was knocked unconscious.
Yeah, and so I know we still have one episode, but I do think perhaps that might have just been, they may have had to cut a scene for time in the actual episode editorial, different thing. So there is a possibility that we're all just being like, that was an editorial choice, and we're all panicking. Yeah. But right now, it does seem that she's okay. And it's good. Because she did end up waking up on her own. We didn't have to have Jean or Xavier needing to go into her mind to wake her up, as we were thinking about last week, potentially having that.
Yep.
And luckily, she's not, comatose through the end of the season, which we also said could have happened.
Could have happened, yeah. But she didn't wake up and become a Sentinel. Nothing happened.
No, that's good.
She's okay. Because, you look at her throughout this episode, yes, a lot of stuff happens with her, but she's fine. Nothing changes about her, so...
Yeah.
Which means that the friggin' Trask Sentinel is powerful as hell to knock Rogue out for a few days like that.
Yes.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting thing, though, once she gets out of bed and gets changed and joins the team for the meeting, she's in her old green and white uniform, and she's wearing Gambit's trench coat. But the old uniform. Holy crap.
Mm-hmm. She's in her 80s suit. And as long as Rogue has some green in her suit, I'm good. I don't have too many opinions on some people's suits, but I know I have preferences to ones over the others.
Okay.
But it's kind of a reference to her Brotherhood suit as well, because she was in all green when she was in the Brotherhood.
Right.
Or some variation of that green and white.
Right.
But yeah, to an extent, I think partially because of the trajectory of where she goes in this episode, it might be a callback to that, but also everyone starts getting different suits. So, and this is her 80s green and white one before she actually got the yellow and green in the 90s, so that's really fun.
Well, and this is what she was wearing before she joined the X-Men, too. So.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not my favorite. I prefer the yellow and green with the brown leather jacket. That's the Rogue look for sure, but, it's playing along with what's happening. They all need new suits because everything just got wrecked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it signals like we're going into a new era of stories here, because there were never any costume changes, roster changes in the original series, so I think this is all showing like, hey, we're going into new territory here.
Yeah, by going into old clothing.
Yes, yeah.
So we'll see how long that lasts. I'm just thinking at the moment it's because this is all they had. They need to suit up, and this is all that's left right now. So
yeah.
All right, let's jump into our next big section here, Magneto's attack and the fallout. That's what I'm calling this little section here. So it turns out that when Magneto sent out his massive global EMP, he also destroyed the Earth's magnetic field, and it will be totally gone in 12 hours at this point in the episode. And that, when you listen to that, I'm going to play the clip right here, that puts a serious lifeline timer on everything, on the world, on the Earth. The entire Earth is going to die in 12 hours. When its magnetic field falls, there's nothing protecting it from all the crap that's in outer space. So that's insane. He just killed the world, but we'll talk about it. So here's the clip, because it's a dire situation.
This was our home, a haven. If it is this horrible here, how bad is it out there?
Thousands are feared dead. All First World infrastructures are in ruin. Without warning, Magneto's thrown the entire planet back centuries.
I can feel the Earth's magnetic field dying even now. When the sun sets tonight, it sets on the future.
We need to find Magneto and convince him to reverse the damage to Earth before it becomes permanent.
Well, Magneto ain't gonna change his mind just because we say please. The man just declared war on the whole planet. His day ends one way.
Logan, if you must punish someone for today, then start with me. I brought us here, my X-Men. Do not make Magnus pay for my designs.
That is dire. Like, and I'm okay with it because I find it so crazy. The X-Men just had a massive battle with the Sentinels and Magneto shuts down the planet. Now the whole world is in trouble. It's a global catastrophe. It's a global threat. The entire world and everybody on it could die. And I'm okay with that happening in the sense of, if you think of our other CW shows, The Flash and Arrow and whatever, every time they went outside their respective cities and it's a worldwide threat, those were the worst storylines. Like for Arrow, all I ever wanted him to do was to protect Star City. I didn't need him to go stop a nuclear missile that was going to destroy the planet. I didn't need him to, like, I found those stories the weakest and the most far-fetched is when it was this global threat, and I hated when they did that. But here on the X-Men, it makes sense. The X-Men have always been a global group of superheroes. They're always fighting all around the world. They're off-planet quite often. And this part, it just hit me really, really hard. It's like, oh my God, like the Earth's magnetic field, that's insane.
Yeah. So thinking through this and like how it worked, obviously there's sci-fi elements, but there are actual real science components to this as well. As to like him manipulating the magnetic field and all of those different things and what that would do if for some reason, somehow, which is not of a person doing it, but solar flares, like a big enough solar flare could knock the Earth's magnetic field into, off of what it could be and doing all of those things. But
yeah.
So we see that the whole world has no power, no electricity. Said later that it can't be fixed or turned back on unless Magneto is the one that reverses this. Scott mentions that thousands are already presumed dead at this point, and all the first world infrastructures are in ruins, so can't turn those back on. You can't do pretty much anything.
Like this is like the Walking Dead like worldwide apocalypse. It's insane.
Yeah. So this would have, obviously thinking about it, this would have turned power off to things like hospitals, like all of those people who were on life support or needing those machines are like now dead. Power to necessary services, so obviously no ambulances can go anywhere to help people. You can't get a fire truck if there's a fire, all of those things. Cars are stopping dead in the middle of the street.
Planes falling out of the sky, maybe?
Planes, helicopters falling out of the sky. People with like pacemakers or like any of that tech inside them are now not working. So thousands of people are now just dead.
I would say millions, really. Like everything for what you just mentioned, that could be millions of people.
It could be. And I said thousands, so they're probably going to be like, okay, maybe he didn't kill too many people, but there are still, that would be huge ramifications.
So let me ask though, because the couple big questions I have here. Did he realize what he was doing? That his EMP would potentially kill the Earth? I mean, maybe that was his intention, to kill all life on Earth and take what mutants that were going to join him up to his asteroid M and then reset the Earth's magnetic field, and now there's nobody left down there. I can rule the planet. I can take over now as its sole, king of the world kind of thing because everybody else is dead. Like, do you think he was intending to do that, or was this just an emotional reaction, again, out of what we're seeing from everybody?
I lean more on the latter of it being more of an emotional reaction. I think he knew that the EMP would, knock out the Prime Sentinels, knock out anything Bastion was controlling to that extent.
I think that's what he was focused on. I've got to stop Bastion. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think he was thinking about the fact that he could have completely taken the magnetic field of Earth out of whack. All of that stuff happening. I don't think that was necessarily his plan.
Okay.
And I think that moment where he's standing on the cliff and about to raise Asteroid M out of the ocean, I think he's like, well, I did this, so I think Asteroid M is my next best hope. Go to space, do all these things that I already have.
probably part of his thought process there, yeah.
So I don't think he was intentionally trying to, like, kill the Earth or go back to the Dark Ages and that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I think that was just a side effect of an emotional outburst that he did with the EMP.
I like that you mentioned that, because that I said that up at the top of the show. Like, he was standing on that cliff and he was contemplating a lot. You could see it in his face. Things were weighing heavy on him, and that was probably part of it. He's probably realizing, holy crap, like, what did I do? And maybe that's why he's grabbing his asteroid, just in case he can't fix this. At least I can survive on the meteor or on the asteroid, and that's why I'm going to get any mutants that want to come with me. You're welcome to join me, just in case this planet doesn't make it. Yeah, and like I said, this is also part of the stuff where it starts to break down a little bit for me, like, the more I think about it. Because to an extent, it does feel like, okay, Bastion could have wanted this, because obviously, you know, as a Sentinel, as machine, he could have survived that, obviously, and all the Prime Sentinels probably could have survived this. You don't think they breathe anymore, eh? I don't know. It's hard to tell. Hard to tell, like, where the machine man divide stops. And all of that. But, you know, and I know we just talked about emotional-wise for Magneto. I don't think he was thinking that part through. And yeah, like, he was just tortured by Bastion for a week or so, all of this stuff. And I think the 12 hours, that deadline, because, like, in real life, there's probably not a deadline like that that would be like, we have 12 hours to reverse something, and it's not being able to get reversed otherwise. Like, it would just happen in a moment. So I feel like they added that to kind of add more narrative stakes to this. Yeah, but it could make a little bit of sense, because Storm says she can sense the Earth's magnetic field dying, so he hit it so hard that it's weakening and maybe it's falling apart, and she just kind of said, I think 12 hours and it'll collapse, it'll be gone. Right. But I think just for me, I guess, I think with Earth already being where it was and how we saw, like, society would be completely broken without electricity at this point. Yeah. I think that's enough of a stake for me. So maybe the 12 hours to me just felt a little, like, cartoony evil, but that's just me. That's just me. But, and, you know, you can't reverse an EMP. Even if you're Magneto, like, an EMP is not something that can be reversed. So he can fix the magnetic field itself, like, around stop that from potentially dying. Yeah. But just thinking through it, like, everything on Earth would need to be manually replaced or rebuilt. Like, you can't exactly just turn all of those power grids back on necessarily. So again, like, huge repercussions we're dealing with here with the fallout that'll probably have to go well into next season unless there's, like, a magical solution in the next episode. Yeah. So Earth is pretty screwed, whether or not. And I have tons of theories about things at the very end that I'll get to, but I don't know. I was just thinking probably too hard about Magneto's motivations and the science behind it, and I was like, some of this doesn't make sense. Not yet. I mean, we have to wait to see what they do, but you also have to give it a little bit of leeway that it is a cartoon still. They do bring in a lot of real-world science, but I'm guessing they're not going to explain it or get the answers for this too realistically. I don't know, but... Yeah, and again, I don't, like sci-fi because it's not 100% realistic. Yeah, but yeah. I think, thinking through it, I was just like... And also, I'm attached to Magneto as a character, so I'm like... Yeah. And I know he goes back and forth between his really antagonistic phases and then his more of, I want to be better phases, but... But I like what you... Like, the fact that you said that, like, the Earth is pretty screwed. Like, whether he fixes it or not, I don't know how many people watching this actually thought that deeply about it to realize, yeah, he shut everything off and it doesn't come back. It's a mess. Like, Cyclops does say it. He just sent the Earth back, generations or thousands of years. Like, basically, it's the Dark Ages, I think. Yeah, because... we've seen other TV shows. There's a TV show called Revolution. Revolution, yeah, I was thinking about that one. Where electricity got shut down and we reverted back to, living what's the, what do you call it when people are, why can't I think of the name? When people first came to North America and they had to colonize the land. The settlers. Settlers and, I can't think of the term. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Like, I do. When people lived off of creating fire for their light and their warmth and all that kind of stuff. So, the world's in trouble, and if you think about it being, even though this is based in 1997, people were still relying on all of the technology. And when you take that technology away, 95% of the population could not handle it. They cannot deal with not having their technology, running their lives, basically.
Yeah, you said the year, and I'm like, I know it's not 1999, but I was like, oh, this is Y2K.
Almost, right? And look how freaked out people were when that happened. Like, so it's a mess. Like, I'm going to be very, very curious to see where the writers take this, because the planet is doomed at the moment. We'll see what they do. So let's move on to another point. I want to talk about Muir Island, because Jean mentions that they're going to relocate to Muir Island for supplies and outfits and all that kind of stuff. Where is Muir Island? Because when they show the island, there's this castle up on a hilltop, and there's this hint of Celtic music playing in the background. And I'm thinking, okay, this is either Ireland or Scotland. I should know where it is, but I don't remember where Muir Island is.
Yes, Muir Island is in Scotland. So it's its own little small island just off the coast, the main coast of Scotland.
Right.
So it's owned by Moira McTaggart, and so that's the location of her genetics lab, basically.
Okay.
So both her and Banshee are dead now in the show, and Banshee's the other one that's usually on Muir Island and things of that nature. So no one is occupying, it seems, right now. So I guess the X-Men kind of get their free reign.
Yeah, but they have a base there because they had all the stuff they need.
Yeah. So just this is a funny side note, but because the transition is from the big foreboding scene where Magneto comes with Asteroid M to the X-Men, and then it abruptly changes to the cheery Scottish bagpipe music, and I just had to I laughed at it the first time because I was like, this is so funny. It's such an abrupt, it's like a 180 change. Oh.
Cool. Okay, so that's where Muir Island is. So
yeah.
What is the history of Muir Island in the comics? I know the name well, and I can't recall what Muir Island had to do with the X-Men and the history with the team.
So like I said, Muir Island owned by Moira, that's where her labs are. So with the X-Men, both in the show and in the comic books, they visited Muir a lot when they needed, Moira's opinion. They needed another scientist's opinion on some scientific matter, genetics matter, someone's powers are going screwy, and they need to figure out why. She was kind of the leading scientist on genetics at that time. Right. Or they used it also when they needed more extensive medical facilities. So in the comics, after the Mutant Massacre, a couple of the members are very severely injured, and they kind of moved them to Muir Island at that time to recover, to try to figure out how to help them. And throughout the comics, they've also used it. Like here, they're using it as a base. They've used it as a second base of operations from time to time. In the Excalibur comics, they've used it as a base after they moved away from Britain for a little bit. And this also happens when the mansion gets destroyed on the regular. From time to time, they kind of use Muir Island as that backup. Right. So here, like Jean said, they're heading there not only for supplies and uniforms, but they say that it's fitted with some Shi'ar technology so that the tech that they have there, and they have some ships that are still working that weren't infected by the EMP, so they can still get to space and travel around.
Okay, so what does Shi'ar technology? Why is it not affected by EMPs? Is it not electrical?
Alien tech.
Okay.
Alien tech plot device.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
Okay. Well, that's cool. So that makes a lot of sense where Muir Island from. It was something that they could always fall back on when crap hit the fan, and they needed a place to regroup, basically. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. There's another side note here while we're talking about Muir Island that I just want to take note of. Is that Cyclops mentions that to get to Muir Island, since nothing they have there is working, they're going to have Nightcrawler teleport them all there. And so, I love Kurt, but he does not have that kind of teleportation range. It's going from New York to Scotland, plus passengers, all of the X-Men. No, he can't do that. He has a max range of 3 miles for teleporting in the comics, and that has never changed or been questioned. So that was a little bit of a plot device to me. I was like, Kurt is teleporting them all to Scotland. Okay.
Well, let me answer this for you. I don't think he teleported them all the way, because we have that scene where they're in an aircraft hangar. There's 2 jets. Scott and Jean meet in the middle, hug each other, and they go their separate ways, and they're loading each onto a different jet. So I think Scott and Nightcrawler and his team flew to the area, and then they teleported down from the jet.
Well, they're already at Muir Island on that scene, because that's the gold and blue team splitting off to go to the island where Bastion is, and then to space. So they're already at Muir Island. So
I think they probably arrived there somehow. I don't know. It's weird. I understand your gripe there. I have a feeling there's just something we didn't see. Because I would never think that Nightcrawler could do that. I think there's just something we didn't see on how they got there.
There's no tech working, so...
Yeah, but...
Unless some of the flyers picked them up and they all flew for a couple hours
maybe,
manually there. Yeah. Could have, but
unless it took time. Maybe Kurt teleported them one at a time, 3 miles after 3 miles after 3 miles till he got close enough.
He did do that. Did something like that in Wolverine in the X-Men animated series. He teleported a little bit at a time from Genosha to the mansion.
Right.
But yeah, so I mean it's possible, but it's just it is a little gripe I did have.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's just something we didn't see, because that's pushing the believability a bit.
Yeah.
But we got a new term on the show: technopath. Brand new word and a brand new idea. A technopath is someone who can communicate with machines telepathically, hence technopathy.
Yeah.
Technopathy. It was a weird word because Forge said it, and I was like, that sounded weird. What did he say?
I know.
Technopathy. How about tenokpathy or something? It just came out really weird. But
I know.
I like the term technopath. That is a very cool new idea.
I know, because you said telepathy, and I was like, that's not how you say... When he's saying like technopath or technopathy, it was like, that's wrong, because telepathy is pronounced differently.
Yeah. Because you're a telepath, but you use telepathy. So if you're a technopath, you use tenekpathy.
Yeah, tenekpathy. But yeah, first time that's introduced here in the show.
Right.
Pretty positive there are some technopaths within the X-Men team.
Well, Forge kind of is one. He can.
Yeah, I think they consider Forge kind of one, because he can't like necessarily speak to the machines, but he like completely understands machinery.
Yeah.
On a different level. But other names are not popping up to my head, but I know there are other mutants who their powers deal with like machinery and electronics and those kind of things.
Right. Still, cool new idea, new term. They brought it here. All right, let's get back to Beast and Forge now that we mentioned their names.
Yeah.
They are old buddies, like you said earlier. They share an interest in tech and science, and it was neat because I didn't remember that they were good friends, and it was just neat to see them kind of nerd out over stuff. And we see them working on a new collar to hopefully get onto Bastion that will hinder his machine powers. And then they want to throw in a neutralizer piece of tech from the Executioner's gun to completely shut him down. But Storm zaps the room with a lightning strike to warn them. No more neutralizing any mutants. And I love that moment. I'm going to play that scene next, and then we'll get into it.
Impress me.
Charles described Bastion as a technopath, which is essentially telepathy for machines.
And this mnemonic scrambler shut down Jean's powers when she was the Dark Phoenix.
So we calibrate the scrambler to Bastion's frequency and sever his hold over the primes.
But we may be able to do more than just that. If Bastion's abilities operate like our mutations, we can use neutralizer technology to permanently disable his control of Prime.
Okay, no neutralizer technology.
It's so good.
Okay. She looked not happy with that idea.
She's shutting that down. She's like, okay, Forge, you should know better. You already did this once. We are not doing it again.
Yep. And she didn't even let him finish his sentence. So it's just so funny.
Yeah, but I want to bring up what I guess Forge and Beast their science was in this. So it's not actually a collar. So it's what they're calling a mnemonic scrambler. So it's actually something that attaches to the head.
Oh, like a headband more.
Yeah, almost in a sense. But they said it's based on the one that they had to use on Jean when she was Dark Phoenix back in the original series, to try to control her powers. So it only worked very temporarily on her, because of the Phoenix. But it did help to her to, like, kind of control her powers to an extent. So, like, Jean, she could kind of get back in control instead of just Phoenixing out. But they want to use this now and try to use it for Bastion's powers, so that they can sever his connection to the Prime Sentinels so that he has no control over that or the other Sentinels. And so it would just be Bastion versus the X-Men, I guess, in a sense. He wouldn't have those powers over tech.
Yeah.
This is another tiny gripe I had, but they're still at the mansion at this point, so their tech shouldn't be working, but it is. But it's fine.
Yeah, but it is forged. Maybe he had something else. I don't know. I didn't even pick up on that.
In my brain, I just said, okay, it's Forge and Beast, so Forge and Beast is my answer as to why that's working, but...
Because they wouldn't have brought in that idea, oh, your leg's still working. Yeah, electromagnetic bulb. Like, I'm sure it was just something like that.
Yeah. But anyway, another point to this, and this was actually, I think, in the earlier scene, but something interesting that Beast brings up is that they're still talking about being able to safely remove the Sentinel, the nanotechnology that the techno-organic virus would have put into all the humans to make them the Sentinels. And he says that he thinks that they can still safely restore their innate humanity and eventually have the technology to reverse the nanotech. So I know that we were...
years.
Right. And I know that we were talking last episode over, like, this isn't reversible. Like, Wolverine is cutting these people in half and they're putting themselves back together. Like, they're not human anymore, but...
They're also going to be dead.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. But maybe here they're saying that there is a way that they can reverse that. So I guess... maybe that's their... thousands are already dead. There's probably thousands of these Prime Sentinels, so we can't wipe out humanity.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's because they wanted to have it happen fast, and Beast is like, no, this is going to take, years and years and years to do, because I can't imagine that being reversed. But even still, even if they restore their innate humanity, these people are still going to look like Sentinels. Mm-hmm. Like, that's creepy as hell. Like, I would not want to be walking down the street with any of these guys wandering around. They're freaky looking.
Mm-hmm.
They're metallic zombies. Like, that's
yes.
That's horrifying.
Yeah, so do you think if, they're able to reverse at least get them their humanity back, but not necessarily all the tech, do you think if that happens in this next episode or whatnot, that we're going to have all these humans having to deal with the fact that they've essentially become a form of mutant? That there's something different now?
Well, how do they? I guess it depends on if they remember anything, because you had said earlier that
true.
They don't remember ever accepting it or agreeing to it. It just happened. So I wonder if they got switched back or they got their humanity back, would they remember what happened to them?
Yeah, but they'd still probably have to look at themselves and be like, I'm part machine.
Well, if they looked in a mirror, it'd be like, holy crap, zombie metal mutant, like, creepy as hell. So, yeah, they're obviously going to... So that's a whole other problem, heap of issues to have to deal with, is now the world's population is all, metal monsters, basically. So, my God, there is so much fallout from what happened. I don't know how you're going to fix it all. I really don't.
I know. I think part of my little watching this one, a part of my thought in the back of my head is like, oh, is there going to be a magic solution that's going to happen? I don't know. I don't think so at this point. Like, we've seen enough that I don't think they're going to make any magic undo switches, something easy, but it's so much fallout. It's so much. And most shows just do not deal with the fallout that they end up setting up in their problems or their plot lines in the stories. So I'm really interested for this.
Me too.
I guess one theory, potentially, because they've set it up, is what if they did use some of the Shi'ar technology, since it's far beyond Earth tech, to try to heal them, since it healed Xavier and we see that tech is still working. I wonder if there's a potential for that to come in as part of the solution.
That's a possibility, right? Why? Yeah. I hadn't even thought of that. I guess they could use the tech that's there to almost reverse engineer and fix a few things.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. All right, well, let's move in to the next point here I have on the notes, and that is Rogue and Charles. So we see Rogue standing kind of down by the lake or the pond or wherever it is on the X-Men mansion grounds there. And Charles rolls up beside her in his wheelchair. And she's really troubled with everything that's gone on and all that she's missed. And you can tell, like, she's got a lot to think about. She doesn't know where she's at, doesn't know what to do right now. And Charles rolls up beside her, and he starts talking about Remy and tries to connect to her. And he's like, man, Remy should maybe be buried here. And she's like, no, he's the most Cajun man I ever met. He should be there. And Charles is apologizing for all that's been lost. But Rogue doesn't want to take his apology. Like I said, everybody's upset with him. She's not happy. And the strongest line that she says, and we're going to hear this a little bit later, but she's like, maybe you should have treated us like people instead of students.
Yeah. Yeah, because, like you said, Xavier, he's talking about how Gambit should have been buried on the grounds of the X-Mansion and not back in New Orleans, which is where I believe he was buried in the funeral. And like you said, Rogue's not happy about that. And he's, criticizing Xavier treating them as just his students and not full people. And I know that I've said it on this podcast before, but I'm one of those people who are also very critical of Xavier most of the time. And this is like what Rogue says here is really kind of the epitome of why, because this is kind of a theme throughout a lot of the comic book storylines is he does only tend to think of his students as just students or the X-Men and people that he can use to help kind of go about what he wants, and that's it. He doesn't take in their full personhood, all of the aspects of their lives. Like, in this instance, things of Gambit's past. Him being a thief, his life in the Thieves Guild, back in the Bayou, which is a huge part of him, and something that he would never separate himself from. But to Xavier, he's like, oh, that's just a criminal past. That's all that is. I only see Gambit as my X-Men now. But as Nightcrawler said in the eulogy, that past is what made him a hero as an X-Man. So to what, Rogue is feeling, to what Xavier sees, all of these things, Xavier does tend to only see the parts of people that he can use as an X-Man and not, like, everything about them. So when Rogue said that, I was like, wow, yes. Like, she said it out loud in the show. I enjoyed that so much.
There's no punches being held back right now. There's nothing being left unsaid. That's what is so mature about the show and so realistic in a sense, because there's so many times that we wanted characters to say things. Mm-hmm. Like, how many times did some character on Flash, keep a secret? And it ruins the entire show for like 8 episodes or for half the season because they had a secret and all you had to do is be honest with the people you love and none of this crap would have happened. That's what ruined the Flash, because it was always about stupid secrets. Here we got X-Men and they're just letting it out. This is what I think. This is what I feel. Deal with it. Right? Like,
for sure.
But this scene, from that moment, it leads into Magneto arriving with his asteroid. And this opens up one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful moment of the episode. I think we both picked this as our favorite scene for sure. Magneto arrives and he basically offers to stand for mutants and to never let this happen again. And his offer is, join me. We are going to protect ourselves like we should have from the beginning. Come with me. It's mutants for mutants. And that's it. No more. None of this crap with humans anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
I know.
He's not there to fight them.
Yeah.
He's just, I'm opening my doors to you. Here's my hand. Join me.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, my X-Men.
He does. They're still his.
Yeah. He's like, you left this to me, Xavier. Like, this is all mine now. It's not yours.
And before we jump into the really heavy, like, meat of this conversation, I just have a science side note. Because we see when he's bringing the asteroid down, there are auroras surrounding the asteroid, so the lights.
Yeah.
So it's like the aurora borealis that's up north. And those are actually created by charged particles interacting with Earth's magnetic field and the gases that are in the atmosphere surrounding that. So since Magneto turned off Earth's magnetic field, the only magnetic activity big enough field right now is being caused by Magneto around this asteroid. So that's where the auroras are forming. So I thought that was kind of a really cool little thing.
There
and it's
you
also
go. Some realistic science right there.
Yes. And something that's a little weirdly uncanny, I think about...
uncanny.
Yeah, I will use that every time it pops up. But because of the timing of when this episode aired, but also when we were recording this today, there's a solar storm happening this weekend that is causing auroras to be visible in places that they usually can't be, and not just up north. So, I could see them down here in PA last night. Hopefully, it's raining right now, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to see them tonight, but which is just really funny, like it kind of connecting that science aspect. So that's just something I thought I'd bring up.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, we could sort of see them here. It was a pretty cloudy night last night, so you had to drive a little ways to try to see them. I'm going to go out again tonight to see them, but we do see them up here quite often, so they're a beautiful thing to experience.
Yes, you're much further north than I am, so and I can never see them here in the middle United States, usually on a normal basis. So yeah, for sure. And if you get away from the city where there's not as much light pollution, you can actually hear them. It's really cool. Oh wow!
Yeah, there's a bit of a sound in the air when they're dancing around there. It's really it's
cool.
I don't know if I could even describe the sound. It just sounds like a hollow. It's just like music in the sky. It's really weird. It's like a hollow, whoa, 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 kind of a weird. I don't know. It's crazy. It's a really neat thing. But if you're way up north and you see them, it's cool.
Yeah, I would love to get a lot further north up one day and be able to go see them and try some of that aerial astrophotography.
Yeah, very, very cool. So Magneto's speech, when he's sitting there arguing with Xavier, he's not even really arguing with him, but he's basically just laying it all out. And when you're listening to him, it's kind of hard to disagree with him after everything that's happened. I mean, he's kind of right. Charles' way that he has been all these years has never really worked out. There's always been fighting. The X-Men, the mutants are always running. They're always hiding. People are always against them. And Magneto's saying, let's stand together against the world that has always feared us. Enough is enough. Xavier's idea of the way things should be has never worked. Here's your proof. Look at the state we're in now because you followed Xavier's path. And I'm just sitting there going, what was the last two words we heard last week? Magneto was right.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel about that?
I mean, this is, like you said, this is my favorite scene. So we will hear the whole thing, despite it being like a 4-minute scene, but it was just like that good that we had to.
I don't care.
So, and like you said, that they're not pulling punches in terms of like dialogue and those kind of things. And I know I said I had some things with like the full extent of Magneto's motivation, but like this scene right here was pretty dang good. With him laying out your way didn't work. It's led to, even if you didn't intend it to, it's led to all of this death, all of this destruction. Mutants are now, thousands of us have been killed. There's these living sentinels out here that are happening. Let's just completely... They tried Genosha, which was a somewhat of a separatist kind of a nation, but still on Earth, hopefully mutants would just be left alone. But now they're like, let's just separate ourselves from the whole Earth. Kind of a thing. He's probably like, whoops, I made the Dark Ages, and those are here to stay, but let's go make a sanctuary for mutants, at least. Try to do that, if that's going to be our only last option.
Right.
So, lots of emotional stuff.
Huge here. Like, it is hitting so hard, and like I said, you can't argue with Magneto. He's not wrong here.
Yeah. And outside of, just the kind of philosophical debates that he's having with Xavier's way, his way, all of that, we all knew it, but we do get that sad confirmation that Leech is actually dead. And he says that believing in Xavier's dream is what killed, metaphorically killed Leech, because Leech believed in Magneto, because Magneto believed in the dream that Xavier had, and he says, it's a dream that you had me sell. And then asks how many more will die on this way to Xavier's future, which is, I mean, that's a big theme in a lot of the books too, of, a lot of the X-Men stuff, you have kind of a Xavier and Magneto's way of thinking as these two big viewpoints that are used throughout time and again. And then you have other mutants and people like Emma Frost and those kind of people who add in other perspectives and different things of that nature, but it's usually still always comes back to Magneto's and Xavier's. Those are kind of the foundations of a lot of the X-Men stories. And I think my favorite line, and I know we have some listeners who are more spiritual and religious and things, but this one that said that gods abandon those that follow them and mutants do not, that one was the one that hit the hardest for me. I was like, wow, that is a statement. Again, we are not pulling punches here.
Yep. And I mean, yeah, trying to be sensitive to everybody's beliefs, but I think when he says gods abandoned, he's not talking about the one god that's prominent right now. I'm thinking more like Zeus and Apollo and all of those god, those kind of god times. Like, I don't know, but yeah, again, powerful statement to make. Wow. And based on everything he says, Rogue, still reacting on emotion, I think, decides to join Magneto. And then Sunspot moves to his side as well after realizing, wait a second, my mom tossed me to the Sentinels and didn't even think twice about it. In fact, she slammed the door on my back. I have no family. I have no home. I've got nobody to rely on. And Jubilee is like, well, you have me. And he's like, I just met you. Like, that's not enough. I don't have family. I'm going to where I know I can be protected and safe. And he joins Magneto too. It's wow. I mean, before you get into it, I want to ask you, does it surprise you that these two characters join Magneto?
Only one. It surprises me that one did, the other one not so much.
Okay.
So, Rogue joining him did not surprise me at all. With her emotional state, what she's been through, like what she saw on Genosha, losing Gambit, already having this connection with Magneto, that didn't surprise me at all.
Right.
So, and, Rogue is, she is in her name. She goes rogue sometimes, so it made perfect sense.
So before you answer about Sunspot, let me ask you then, how do you feel about that, though? Does it make you hate Rogue? Does it make you despise her or think, oh my God, what are you doing? What and what are the writers doing? Why are they doing this, Rogue? What do you feel to see her having this emotional trauma and she's, not being the heroic Rogue, she's being a very darker side of herself and joining Magneto?
Yeah. I mean, watching it, like, I wasn't going, no, Rogue, don't do it at all. I was going, yes, Rogue, you stand up for what you need to do. That was my, thought process, even though it is, like, it is to an extent, like, there's a part of it going, like, she's abandoning the X-Men, like, she is abandoning this team she's been with for years. And she has that moment where Storm is like, no, Rogue, your family's here. And she's like, you don't get it. You weren't here. Yeah. Like all of the stuff I saw.
Yeah, you weren't even here, gal.
Yeah. And so to me, I'm like, Rogue can go evil for a little bit. That's fine with me. Considering where they're at and what the world has. So I didn't have this moment of like, oh, she's not standing with the X-Men. I'm upset with her. I was kind of like, yeah. This is fun. Rogue should do what she wants.
Well, it makes sense story-wise and character-wise, like you said, for what Rogue has gone through and from her past, where she's come from and everything that's happened to her up to this point, it makes sense. It makes sense for her character. And
with Gambit being gone at this point, she leaves his coat with the professor. I feel like that was kind of an effectively her saying, like, I'm letting go of him. He was kind of what's holding me back from, my full anger, my full outburst, whatever it was. So that's how I see on Rogue's point.
Okay, so there's a reason why I'm asking you these questions.
Okay.
Is because I joined a couple X-Men 97 Facebook groups just to see what the chatter is. And there are some people in there, and I'm not even going to call them fans, because when they react like this, they're not fans in my opinion. There's a few people that are absolutely freaking out how could you do this? You just ruined Rogue. She is now the worst character ever. Oh my God, I can't believe you did that. You completely blah, blah. And they're just going on and on. And I'm like, are you actually thinking about it? Like, what kind of a viewer are you? Are you watching this knowing Rogue's history? Are you watching this knowing what she's gone through? Are you actually invested in this emotionally? Because if you were, you wouldn't have this kind of reaction. You would actually you would understand and see what's going on with Rogue. The surface level freak out show, the stupid little crying baby that you took their candy away from them kind of reaction. I'm just like, oh my God. And it actually made me mad. So I can't remember what I posted. I posted a couple, because a couple of them had a post of a picture of Rogue, and then they're blasting about how stupid this was. And there's, of course, hundreds of comments on there. I'm just like, yep, you're not a fan of the show. Why don't you just shut up and get off of these forums, like, kind of thing. So that's why I wanted to ask you about that, because I truly believe this makes sense for Rogue, and you have to understand what she's gone through to really see where her emotions are at right now and what she's going through.
Yeah, and I think, like, to what you just said, not necessarily just about Rogue, but people getting so upset over certain aspects. And, obviously I love this stuff, so I get emotional about certain things, whether that could be anger, surprise, shock. But I think to an extent, thinking about, like, media literacy and, like, wanting to dig into, like, why are you having that emotional response to something? Or sometimes when it's a favorite character or something and they do a decision, they make a choice or an action that you don't like, sometimes you freak out because suddenly you don't have, like, they're not on the moral high ground. I don't have the moral high ground over people because this is my favorite character. But it's interesting because, like, those kind of characters, like, if you don't have them make these choices that have huge repercussions or go on these journeys that make them get to the decisions like that, then you're not really writing, like, a three-dimensional character. Kind of at that point, you're just writing, like, 2D, or a person who's making the right choice every single time. Like, that's not an interesting character. Nor is that a realistic character. We can try to do the best, we can in real life all the time, but, like, we don't. We don't make the right decisions all the time. I'm never going to claim that I have the moral high ground most of the time in my life. But, I can, thinking in terms of, X-Men or anything of that nature, there's a lot of people that don't want to engage with media or writing or, whatever medium it may be and actually analyze these things to an extent like what we're doing here, but just in general, like, why am I attached to these stories? Why am I attached to these characters? So people just have these gut emotional reactions, especially to favorites of, like, them doing the right thing, wrong thing, because they equate it with their own personal moral standings or ethic standings and those kind of things. So it's a whole other conversation I'm not going to get into, but just speaking from a writing perspective, as I'm a writer, storytelling, like narrative storytelling, has been one of my interests and niches since college. I've written papers on these kind of things. I've done a whole lot of that. So that kind of stuff is really interesting to me, and trying to analyze why certain reactions cause reactions internally in viewers and those kind of things. So, and I fall under that, obviously. We've complained about different things and whatnot, but it is a very interesting thing to think about, like, why do people feel the need to, like, make a post like that on why is a writer destroying this character or something of that nature. And I think there's a difference between writing a character outside of their characterization. There are a lot of things like that, like a writer might just not understand a character or a certain thing, and then them completely understanding this character, all of this build up to something, and then people just going like, well, I know better. So those kind of things. So that was my off my soapbox. But there you go.
Well, I'm glad that I put the box down for you to get up on, because I wanted to know how you felt about this, knowing that you're a writer, because that it bothered me. And I mean, listen, there's no bigger Rogue fan on this planet than me, and yet if I can be okay with this, then why can't everybody else? Like, I understand what she's going through, so that I just didn't appreciate that type of reaction, and I'm glad that you were able to break it down. I mean, so much more at a higher level of thinking and intelligently elaborating on it than I did. Like you took what my reaction was to these stupid posts and you explained it away, and that was perfect, Abby. So I totally appreciate that, and it makes so much sense. Like, yeah, these characters have to in order for them to be believable and become three-dimensional to us, the viewers, they have to have flaws.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be things that they do that we might not always agree with, but it helps them develop depth and feel like they're more real. Because if they don't, then like you said, they become two-dimensional. And I think people that react to that, you're a two-dimensional viewer. You're not able to think three-dimensionally and think realistically as to how people would be. Like, I don't know what you expect out of a TV show, but I would never want to watch TV with someone like that. So I'm really, really glad that you broke it down like that. That was great.
I think characters should go a little evil sometimes too. There's a reason why a lot of people love villains so much. Like, I have a lot of villains or antagonists that I really like as characters. Like, obviously, I would not agree with them probably in real life on certain things or how they went about, but because they usually get more fleshing out, they get more backgrounds or motivation sometimes than the protagonists do.
Yeah.
So just like as recent, like Magneto's one of my top characters because he's so fleshed out and dimensional as a character. You know, not just here, but in the comics and stuff too. But just thinking in terms of X-Men. So, you know.
Well, perfect example. Look at the other show that we're covering on the network right now, Tomorrow People. This week's episode, one of our heroes, look at what Kara did. Like, she takes that kid and jabs a needle in his neck to neutralize him of his powers. That was going to the dark side, and she's supposed to be one of the good guys. So, there you go. Like, how can you not cheer that on as like, wow, what depth for this character to go to? Like,
and when you're in a setting like a war, or when you're in, for both, Tomorrow People, you just talked about that, but also X-Men, especially when you're in these situations where you're basically backed into a corner, or you're in the middle of like a war. You're in these situations where you have to think in a different way than necessarily just living out a normal life. There are a lot of situations and choices that come up where the most ethical or the most moral in your eyes in like everyday life might be the decision that actually saves more people or something and I'm not trying to justify a lot of like war crimes and certain things of that nature. If you're living in a situation where your survival is the only thing you're thinking about to an extent, you're going to be thinking in a different way. You're not going to be making a lot of the same choices, or to this extent, like to Rogue, to Magneto, when you've been so traumatized by certain things you've gone through, when you're in this emotional state, you're not going to make the most rational choices either.
Right.
There you go.
Exactly. Well said. Well, let's bring it back now to Rogue and Magneto. So this whole idea of her and Sunspot joining him. So we've talked about Rogue. Now tell me what you think of Sunspot joining. Because you said that you were not surprised about, you were surprised about that one.
Yeah. And this one is the one that I feel like there wasn't as much motivation involved. Like this one, he did explain, like he saw, like he experienced his mom betraying him, handing him over to the Sentinels, all of that. But I didn't feel as much of a lead up or motivation to this choice as like Rogue had. To an extent, part of me felt like they just needed another X-Men member to go off with Magneto, or like they wanted, him and Jubilee to be, paired off with each other in the fight, kind of a thing. Because like he just got his training uniform, he just started trying to fight back and learning how to, be in the resistance with the X-Men, so to say. Because before all this, he didn't want to fight. He was only worried about himself. So I feel like it wasn't the most motivated choice, in my opinion. I feel like, because there's a lot of stuff in the rest of the episode that, we needed this person to stay on the X-Men team. But to me, I feel like what would have been more interesting was if someone like Cyclops had went with Magneto taking this choice. Considering his conversation with the professor earlier and how Cyclops, Scott, he's always the one that's going to end back up at the mansion. He's always going to be the one that leads the X-Men. And one of the big things that he brought up was that Professor Xavier didn't give him that choice of whether or not to lead the X-Men, didn't give him the choice of welcoming Magneto to the team. So here, Magneto is in that opposite position of him giving all the X-Men a choice to come, join him or not. And I feel like in this matter, with Cyclops going through what he has, we've seen him starting to get radicalized a little bit. We've heard him say Magneto is right in certain circumstances throughout this season. And him being mad at the Professor, I feel like this would have been a prime opportunity to have Cyclops be like, you know what? I'm having a choice. This is what's happening. Professor didn't give me one. Now I'm going with Magneto. So that's how I would have written it. But
that would have been heavy. Wow.
We had some of the other scenes, like him and Cable talking and all that stuff, that he needed to be in that certain position, to have. But just thinking it through, I think that would have been really interesting if that had happened.
Wow. Yeah. Could you imagine? Because we brought up Cyclops could possibly go on down a dark path for a little while. Mm-hmm. Like you said, this would have been a great spot for him to go. Man, that would have shocked the Professor and the rest of the team. Because he's essentially their leader.
Yeah.
And for him to walk out on them, whoa, man.
Mm-hmm. But that's just my take.
Yeah. Well, let's bring it back to Rogue, though, because there is a couple moments here that we're going to hear, but you had a few notes here about some of the things that she said.
I do. I just want to bring them up.
Leaving. Yeah, because holy cow. Again, not holding anything back.
Mm-hmm. Because Magneto brings up, who else is going to die, before Xavier's dream is realized, all of this. And then Rogue kind of brings up a similar sentiment when Storm, like I said earlier, Storm is like, no, Rogue, don't leave your family. And then Rogue is talking about, who else is going to die? Because she points at a couple of the characters and she's like, is it going to be Jean? Because, we've been there, done that, since Jean has died multiple times. So I thought that was a little bit of a funny dig. But also, it's kind of true. She's already died trying to do what Xavier's want. The first time she did, quote-unquote, die was when Xavier was just like, hey, astronauts in trouble, go help. And the X-Men are just like, we've never been to space. And then that's how the Phoenix Force merges with her, because she's the one piloting the shuttle back while trying to hold it back with her powers, and she does technically die on that re-entry into Earth. So I just thought that was a good dig.
Well, you could see Jean and Scott react to it. When she says it, right. Jean kind of looked almost embarrassed or sheepish the way she turns away. Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then she mentions that Bishop is still gone, which is true. We don't know where he is, and he hasn't returned since episode 3.
Yeah.
So for all she knows, he's lost in the time stream, or he could be dead somewhere else too. And then she brings up Morph too, which she says that, he was barely on the team 30 minutes before they were tossed to the wolves, which is kind of a little bit of a meta dig too, because in, Night of the Sentinels, way back, the pilot,
Episode 1, Season 1.
Yeah. Morph, quote unquote, also dies before the episode is up. So he was, yes, barely on the team 30 minutes, because that was the length of the TV episode, before they end up dying in that. So I thought, wow, pulling punches, or not pulling punches here.
Yes, crazy. Rogue letting them have it. Crazy. Well, we're going to hear all of that again. Mm-hmm. Don't you worry, because it is the biggest, most important part of the episode, I think. Let's move on to the scene when we get Scott and Nathan. They have a bit of time together, just the two of them, back on Muir Island there, as they're suiting up and getting ready for the next part of the mission. And we see that they're getting along a lot better. And I'm just thinking, nothing like a crisis that you share to bring family together. Because they weren't liking each other. Last time we talked about him, Scott was like, yeah, he just avoids me every chance he gets. And now here, they're suddenly talking, and Cable's being nice to him. And we're going to hear that clip again, and then I'll let you respond.
Mm-hmm.
Hitching a ride to Asteroid M. Just when we started working well together.
Look, if I had it my way, I'd be on Isla Mirada with you and Jean instead of space. But she's...
not my mother.
It's confusing to me too, Jean, Madeline. But what I know for certain is that they're two of the strongest people I've ever known. trust her. And, son...
Let me guess. Be careful?
No. Give him hell.
Oh, hey. Almost forgot.
Am I going to war or a circus?
What'd you expect? Black leather?
Now, I know you've got something to say about, but
I do.
Let's just talk about the scene first, though, because it's a nice moment. Like, they're actually getting along, and they're talking like father and son, and it's just pretty cool. I was really, really happy to see this happening between the two of them.
Yeah. I mean, it's a short scene, but it is nice between them because you've seen Cable kind of making digs at Scott for being like, Dad, like, you abandoned me. Because he would only have memories of Madeline because she's the only one that put that, basically that thought in his head. Scott wasn't there when they were saying goodbye to Nathan. So he's probably had a little bit of that resentment. So it is good to see, like, after how much they've worked together and all of that. And also, telling him, like, I know Jean is not Madeline, but, like, please trust her. She's going to help with that. It was just good. Yeah, it's nice seeing that after all they went through.
It's really nice. But there's something funny at the end there. What'd you expect? Black leather.
Oh, it's so good. Oh, it's so good. If you've seen any of the X-Men Fox films, especially that first one, you'll know why that is such a good... Yeah, the live-action films. You'll know why that is a good line, because after 24 years, because the first one came out in 2000, animated Scott gets to clap back at live-action Scott and those movies' decisions, because Bryan Singer, the director of those movies at that time, he made a statement that he didn't want to stick that close to the comics. He wanted to make it more gritty and grounded and realistic and not necessarily have all this comic stuff. And, since then we've seen... I know. Yeah, boo to that. But since then we've seen that sticking to the comics can make some good stuff. So I did pull that clip just so we could hear from that movie, just so we could hear what he was responding to.
You actually go outside in these things? What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
Yeah, so we want the yellow spandex. Come on.
Yep. So the movies were trying to make fun of the cartoons, even though every fan was like, yeah, we want the spandex. Because the black leather never looked good. I hated that look.
Yeah, it was never the greatest, because... So we finally got that. I know we heard it. They put it in that final trailer, but we got it in the episode, and I think all fans everywhere were cheering.
Yeah.
During that.
So much fun. And I just love, like, that it's bringing this cartoon into our realistic life. Like, it's just it's connecting it to the real world. It's just so cool. Mm-hmm. Just so fun. Speaking of the uniforms, they all get suited up in their old uniforms. And I'm talking like original X-Men uniforms from when they first burst onto the comic book scene. But they must be all that they have left, because and we were talking about this, like, why would they be wearing these old uniforms? Because I'm guessing everything else is destroyed. Knowing that Muir Island is still standing, that's where they had uniforms left, and they need to go to battle. They need their protection. They need their identities covered up, all that kind of stuff. That's where they're getting these uniforms, and it's a classic look. I mean, I don't remember ever seeing these uniforms be animated before, the originals.
Not necessarily. There's been like inspiration ones inspired by these looks, but not like directly pulled from the page looks like this.
Yeah. Okay, so that's good. And part of me though here, like, I do have to say, I have always actually preferred Wolverine's brown and orange. That was always my favorite. That was the Wolverine that I read in the comic books, and the Wolverine that I just like that look. Because the Wolverine, when you think of the animal, that's the colors of the animal. They're not blue and yellow. I always hated the blue and yellow. A Wolverine is kind of a dark, burnt orange and brown type of fur, and that's the way Wolverine I thought looked the best. That was my favorite. All the other costumes do look a little bit goofy and corny because it's just, comic books from the 50s and 60s or whenever they were created. That was the artistic style back then. But Wolverine, loved the brown and orange.
Yes, these ones are all from artist John Byrne. So these are all their 70s and 80s costumes. So when they did Giant Size X-Men #1, when they kind of revamped the team, these are what all of their looks were like, which is super great because I think that's a lot of people's like, again, they're like distinctive, definitive costumes for them because a lot of people got into them into the 80s or mid 70s because I was 1975 when Giant Size X-Men. So, and those are the ones like even with me, I'm younger. But I went back and I read a ton of the 80s ones, and that's kind of my foundation too, because I picked up an 80s one for the first time, and I read that time period and then jumped into the more modern and then kind of jumped around, trying to fill in people's backgrounds and storylines and things. Yeah. So these ones are also like the ones that I really love. I'm in my 20s, and I'm sure people who are like you, who are actually reading them in the 70s and 80s, are like, that's their uniforms too. So I think it's really great that, different generations, we can all kind of love that. But I also love Wolverine's brown and orange suit, and they've never adapted that one into the animation live action, especially not live action, before. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He had, in Evolution, his first suit was an orange and black one, so it was kind of like inspired by, but it wasn't the brown and orange. But like that's my favorite too. I've always liked that one a lot more than the yellow and blue as well. Those are two colors that like shouldn't work together like on a suit, but they just do for Wolverine. So I'm really happy to see it here, and I hope that we don't just see it for this episode because it also got destroyed. But I hope that it's not a one and done, because I'd be really upset if they didn't make that like his costume moving forward for at least season 2.
Yeah, because I mean, at least we got to see him putting it on and all that stuff. But yeah, we're I don't think there's much left of it either, but we'll see.
Yeah, and like you said, like this version of Scott's to me is the sillier look. 'Cause I don't love it when like he has the hood over his head. I don't know. I like seeing his hair. It makes him look more like a person.
Yeah, this looks like a weird. You know what he looks like? If you look at, he looks like Bender from Futurama.
Oh my gosh! I see that. And the Marvel Girl costume is a little classic because it's what Jean wanted to wear on like the fight for Phoenix on the moon and all that kind of stuff. But it's it's not very practical as a tactical outfit.
Yeah.
I think green is a great color for Jean, but I was never a big fan of that one. She's had some more modern ones that have the green look to him that are pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then Cable gets his blue suit also. That's his suit from the late 90s. It's supposed to be reminiscent of Cyclops' from the 90s that he now doesn't wear. But
and that one looked fine. Like I didn't mind. Yeah. I actually like that one better than the weird mishmash whatever suit he wears normally.
Mm-hmm. And then so Morph gets their Exiles one. So Exiles and New Exiles is the book where this one kind of comes from. So it looks very similar with the blue and yellow with the shoulder pads to it. But in the comics, he also has a cape with it, but he doesn't have the cape in this one.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So some fun there, just fun. Whether you like it or not, it's fun.
Right. I think we've all got our favorite suits and uniforms, so I'm very sorry to everyone whose their favorite one was just destroyed. From the 90s.
Well, now we move to a scene with Charles Xavier talking to President Kelly. But tensions are high. Nobody trusts Charles anymore, and I feel like he may have lost all of his connections. But he's asking to gamble on him one more time. If you don't trust me, trust my X-Men. And then the other question I wanted to ask you here, like he wasn't actually there in the Oval Office. This looked like it was like a mental connection, a mental phone call.
Yeah, that was definitely an astral plane conversation.
Okay.
So before I dive into what he says, just another fun note I just found out is that President Kelly is actually voiced by Ron Rubin, who was the original Morph actor. So I just learned that. So I know how they're bringing some of those older characters back to play other characters, like how Val Cooper is played by the original Jean. So it's kind of fun that they're giving them opportunities to play other characters still here in this new animated series.
Well, the original Gambit is now playing Cable. So.
Cable, yeah. Mm-hmm. But so something that Xavier brings up, Kelly brings up, is the Magneto protocols. So he mentions that. So what this is, they don't explain it in this episode of what that is, but in the comics, they do have the Magneto protocols. So what this is, it's a network of satellites that basically all of the governments have set up that were designed to create a defensive shield around the Earth when they're activated, and it prevents Magneto from actually using his powers on Earth. It kind of disrupts his ability to use them. So they can only be activated by the UN Security Council, and I brought up the Fatal Attraction storyline a couple of times here, but they're actually activated in that storyline. And when Magneto realizes this, he actually goes up into space, and then he sends an EMP down to them on Earth. So this is a bit of kind of the opposite order is what they're doing. So he's already done the EMP. So if they do happen to activate this at all, then they might just be doing it in the reverse steps that they happen in the comics.
Okay. So they do have a defense mechanism to stop Magneto if he decides to go global maniac.
Yes.
Which he's starting to do here. So that's kind of cool that they have that in place, because that, again, just elevates the threat of Magneto. He is, when you say he's a mega level threat, I mean, we've seen him go beyond that now.
Yeah.
And obviously the humans recognize that, and they're prepared. They're trying to be prepared to have some type of defense against him if necessary. So it's no different than Batman knowing all of the Justice League's weaknesses. In case they go rogue and go evil, he knows how to take each one of them down.
Yeah, and there's also, Xavier has something called the Xavier Protocols, which are very similar to that. He actually has files on every member of the X-Men team and what to do if they go rogue and go evil and stuff as well, too. So, Side note.
Yeah. Okay.
And I just want to bring up this real quick, too, before they head off on their mission. There's this quick shot of Beast, and he's with Trish in the med bay on Muir Island.
Yeah. And he's holding her hand.
Yeah. I'm just going to say that this Beast is way more compassionate than I would be, because if someone I liked turned into a killer robot that was out to get me, I'd be like, nope, sorry.
Yeah, unplug you.
So, it looks like he's still hoping that she would be okay after everything.
Well, and what was weird is she had an IV in her hand.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you trying to do? Like, revive her? Like, I don't understand what's going on there.
Yeah, I guess. Keep her healthy. If he's able to reverse and bring, their humanity back.
Maybe, yeah, maybe. Okay.
And then we see, Nightcrawler is praying with a rosary real quick, and then we see Jubilee holding Roberto's business card that he gave her in episode 1, and she burns it up.
She fries it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So a lot of emotions happening here.
Lots of it.
Oh my gosh. All right, let's talk about Bastion now. It appears that he can power his machines through his ability to control him, through his what was their term?
Technopathy.
Technopathy, yeah. As Forge says, but it's all through cables. He can't just do it mentally. He actually has to be connected, plugged into them with hard wiring. And we see that he's got an army of Sentinels that are all charging up, waiting for the X-Men. Like, there was rows and rows of them, and you could see that he sends this huge burst of power through the cable system, and it wakes them all up, and they get supercharged, and off they go. And I was like, wow, like, that was insane. But what this shows us is that Magneto's EMP was kind of all for naught, because if it can't stop Bastion, which is what Magneto was trying to do, stop Bastion and the Sentinels, and he can just simply reawaken them or charge up some new ones with his latent mutant ability, or whatever you want to call it. That's scary, because if killing the Earth can't stop him, what can?
Yeah.
Wow.
This was also one of my questions, because the way they presented it is that Bastion technically should have been taken out by the EMP. We see him plugged into cables and all of those things on the island, powering up the Sentinels and all of that. So we know that he is part machine, at least by that. And he's not fully biological, I don't think, because otherwise he probably wouldn't have been able to have those plugs and different things in there. And I know narratively that if he had been disabled by the EMP, we wouldn't have another episode. They probably would have been able to just take him down, but, like, theoretically, he should have been affected. But, you know, I think it's one of those sci-fi things that they're like, yeah, we need him to still be, like, active.
Well, let's talk about that, though. Why could he possibly have been unaffected by it? Because if you think of how they showed us how he came to being, it was like a liquid jelly type of something from Nimrod that got into his dad, and his dad got, you know, the missus pregnant with this internal technovirus, whatever it was. So I don't think he is fully machine. So I'm wondering, like, there's something about Bastion that makes him unique and one of a kind, where his Sentinels are the technovirus enhanced. I don't think he is. Yeah. I think he's biological techno somehow, or technobiological. His specific combination probably gives him an immunity to an EMP because he's not fully electrical, not fully mechanical. He's made out of flesh and blood that happens to have circuitry running through it. I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of to explain it away, is he's different.
So, are we making the argument that he could be just fully biological, and that he just has the technopathy, even with seeing him like strung up by these cables and all of that? Because he had stuff plugged into him.
I think he's more biological than the Sentinels, but he can still be connected mechanically. Like I said, I think because the Nimrod, whatever the Nimrod thing was that hooked into him or hooked into his dad, he's got a liquid version. So think of the liquid Terminator. I think he's got a liquid version of this techno stuff, and it maybe can't be affected the same way as full-on electronic components can.
Yeah, I can buy that, but it's just an interesting question, I guess, of how Bastion works.
That's why I'm trying to tear into it. It's let's try to figure this out, comic book science wise.
Yeah, and because Xavier says that Beast originally says that he was trying to find the central command center for all the Sentinels, but he couldn't. And then Xavier's like, that's because Bastion is the command server, basically. He's acting as the command server.
Right.
And while we're talking about Bastion, we didn't mention this in the earlier scene, but Xavier reveals that he visited Bastion as a kid because Cerebro picked him up, and he thought that he could be a mutant.
Interesting.
So, Xavier's talking about when he went to go visit Bastion. You know, he talked to Bastion's mom, and she shut the door in his face when he said the word mutant. So, to an extent, like, she probably nurtured a bit of his hatred towards mutant alongside, you know, what programming he already had from Nimrod Master Mold. So she's not completely blameless in this, I'm saying. But, like, that is, I think, the concept of, like, him potentially, is he counted as a mutant in this case? Like, how the X-Men mutants are. Because we just had this conversation of, like, is he fully biological or not? And, like, because the X-Men are all, like, they have the X gene. You know, it's passed between them. You know, their two parents might not be mutants, but they can pass along the X gene. So this thing of, like, what Nimrod, you know, infected his dad with, it's something that's passed on biologically. So does that basically make him a mutant too?
Because he was born with it, like mutants are born with it. It's interesting that Cerebro picked him up. So it is he, because his Nimrod's from the future. So is this a future evolutionized? What's the word I'm thinking of? Like, is this a evolved version of the mutant X gene somehow?
Yeah, I don't know if I would call it the X gene per se.
It's the computers, because Nimrod and the Master Mold and all that, they're trying to mimic everything. Maybe this is their AI version of the X gene. We created our own version of it, and that's because I mean it calls back to when we were saying how freaky it is that Sentinels can have babies. This is Master Mold and Nimrod creating what they're always fighting against. All right, well, X-Men and mutants, you guys keep standing up against us. We're going to match you with our own version of you. Fight fire with fire.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Just questions you had to think about.
Oh my God.
And all the sci-fi of it all.
It is crazy to think about. Wow. Okay, let's dial it back and talk about Storm. It does seem she may have gotten more powerful after getting her powers back. Or maybe she's just not holding back anymore. But that size of that tornado, that was not a Category 5. That was like off the charts tornado that she created. And her control of the weather, like I know she's also considered an Omega level type of mutant, but I don't know. Maybe it's her just not holding back anymore. But wow, she looked powerful.
Yeah, that, and also, I mean, she can feel the magnetic field and all the Earth too, and that affects the weather. So maybe at this point too, she's just like, I'm controlling that, like, for real, for the Earth right now. So she's probably tapping into that a bit. But I mean, I would say, like, yeah, she probably did get a bit of a power boost now that she's, that lie is gone. She's not holding herself back. So everything she went through with that. So I'd say, like, yeah, she's like, I'm doing what needs to be done too.
Right. Again,
like,
no holding back.
It's Sentinels. Right. There's no reason to hold back against the Sentinel.
Yep. You're right. So all this to say, only for her and Forge to take on more Sentinels than we can count. They do okay until Forge gets hit out of the sky, and she was doing okay. She was fighting. She was ripping him around, but she gets distracted when he gets shot down, and she sees the jet going down. And when she's distracted, she gets blasted in the back by one of the Sentinels, and you see them both fall from the sky. His ship, his jet crashes into the ground. She goes right into the water, and we have no idea if they're okay because they don't show up again.
Yep, that's the last we see of them. So they're going to leave that as what happens next for the next episode.
What WTF? Like, what are we witnessing in this episode? Because we heard all of the rumors that the whole Gambit dying was only the beginning. So we'll come back to this thought at the end of the episode. But holy crap.
Right. Yes.
Let's move on to the ground team. Versus we got the space team, we got the ground team. So the ground team is Cable, Jean, Beast, and Morph. And they're looking for Bastion's hideout out in the Galapagos Islands, apparently.
Yep.
And they come across a town that he built. And I'm looking at this little town. It looked like an old-fashioned town from like the 50s or 60s. He must have been planning his own little civilization eventually. Like his mom and his Sentinel brothers and sisters and whatever. We're going to just have this little town on Galapagos Islands and we're going to live peacefully while the rest of the world is dead. I don't know. It was weird. It was just really, really weird to see that there's this old town. Again, making me think of the nuclear towns that they built with all the mannequins. That's what it made me think of again.
Yeah, because I know we've been calling this like a rundown town. Like it must have been an abandoned town is what we said. Because we've seen it when Trask was running away at one point, and this is where Magneto was being held. So, and it looked like it was abandoned, like built in the 60s or 50s. So, I mean, technically with this timeline, I guess I don't know, Bastion he would have been born in the 60s, I think, is when Nimrod got blown apart in that episode, I want to say. But it's in the middle of the Galapagos Islands, so I don't know if anyone would have built that there before him. But it looks like it's like being overtaken by the jungle. So maybe he could have built it at some point and just still lets the jungle, grow around it.
Right. Right.
But yeah, either way, it is kind of creepy that he just has this like little ghost town, nuclear bomb testing town for himself. But totally. Yeah, like you said, Galapagos Islands, because that's where Cyclops mentioned it earlier. He's pointing to it on the globe. And I was trying to figure out if that was from the comics, if that was something like that, and it's not in there. But it could just be a quick nod to actually Charles Darwin, and because he's the one that has a lot of the theories of evolution and natural selection and all those things. Whether or not those are good theories at this point in life, with what we know about science. But with the show, obviously we deal with evolution very heavily. On all fronts, and Darwin did a lot of his research of the species that he studied in the Galapagos Islands. So that might have just been a kind of a nod to Bastion wants to talk about evolution and building this new species. We're going to put it here just kind of to be a nod to kind of the father of a lot of the evolutionary theory we have.
Right.
And another small detail, but I thought it was funny when they first get to the town. There's a shot of just kind of a wide shot of it, and the diner sign is kind of falling apart, and all it says is "die."
I never noticed that.
Yeah, I honed in because I'm a big like horror fan of stuff too, but also like haunt events.
Yeah.
And Halloween Horror Nights, which is at the Universal Studio Parks here. They have a Mel's Drive-In, which is one of the fast food places there. It's like a 50s retro diner, but when they do Halloween Horror Nights, they turn it to Mel's Die-In. So like I immediately like zoned in on that because
Okay.
I love that stuff. So I thought it was funny that I saw that here.
Die. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh man, fun stuff. Well, while they're wandering through the town, they get attacked by Sentinels, and together they're doing okay. They're fighting together. We see a lot of fun stuff. We'll just throw in the morphs right here because we only get the one. Morph turns into the Hulk.
Yeah.
And then Jean uses her telekinesis and she's throwing him around, basically superpowering him up for massive punches. She sends him into this little whirlwind-like spin, and he punches the head right off of a Sentinel. And then we see him land, and he's like, "Morph smash!" And I'm just laughing. I loved all of this. It was so much fun. But Morph turning into the Incredible Hulk, that is pretty freaking powerful. I mean, to be able to turn into the Hulk, which is essentially one of Marvel's arguably strongest characters ever, because the angrier he gets, the stronger he gets, and it's almost impossible to stop the Hulk. That's crazy to me that Morph can do that. Become the Hulk and then be just as strong as him. That's insane.
Yeah. Morph's powers are still a bit unclear, I think. They've kind of been a Deus Ex Machina of cameos and whatever they might need at certain points. But
explain that thing again. That stupid thing is what? That saying just
what a
doesn't...
Deus Ex Machina?
Yeah, that stupid saying. Isn't it just like it's like godlike abilities to just fix a problem?
I wouldn't say like godlike abilities. It's more of a like, here's this convenient plot device that shows up in like a third act that wasn't established before. That's going to be the thing that fixes everything.
Okay.
So it's like, oh, the characters need XYZ to like fix this problem. Oops, they just stumbled upon them.
Yeah.
Like here they are, they fix that. So that's kind of like
Okay.
this, plot contrivances. That
Why can't we
happen
just say that? Here's a convenient thing.
It's got a terminology, like a reason why it's called that, and I don't remember the history off the top of my head. But,
Okay. But to your point, though, Morph does have that. It's like, we need him to fix something. Here he can turn into the Hulk.
Yeah, so the powers, I think it was explained that Morph's powers can be the shape-shifting, but also taking on some of the physical attributes of their shape-shifting. So, like, with Quicksilver, like, they have the speed a bit, but, like, can't hold that, because obviously, like, Morph can't actually have the same super speed that, like, Quicksilver has in his genetics.
Right.
But, so, like, for Hulk here, like, there's no gamma radiation underneath, but I think can take on a bit of the physical strength, at least for a certain period of time. But wouldn't have, like, Hulk is, like, super endurable, can basically withstand anything. But I think Morph would get some of the strength for at least a bit while he's morphed into them.
And maybe that's why Jean was enhancing him then a little bit.
Yeah, because we see Jean using her TK to, like, propel him around everywhere. So that probably adds to the actual strength while he's got, some of the girth and the muscle on him.
Yeah.
That kind of adds the actual impact for the smashing.
Yeah. Morph smash. I mean, it was just fun.
Yeah.
But it's cool to see, like, all of these other characters, it's cool to see them animated in the X-Men 97 animation style.
Yeah. Yeah, it is cool. I like seeing that and what the character designs look for that.
Yeah. Very, very cool. But, like I said, they were fighting well together, but once they got separated, they don't do so well. I mean, we see Morph, he changes into Sinister to try to trick Bastion, but Bastion easily catches onto that and blasts him basically, and he falls apart, and now he's just regular Morph on the ground there. and he's in trouble. We see Beast try to run in with the Scrambler, but Bastion grabs him with all those techno arms and takes it, so Beast's out of the fight.
Mm-hmm.
We see Cable get blasted like he's out on the city streets fighting. He gets blasted by one of the Sentinels, and he goes flying out into the forest and doesn't come back until later. We see Sinister actually show up and join the fight, and he attacks Jean. And this I found really interesting, because before actually attacking, he offers to tell her everything about her and Madeline, like exactly when they got switched. But she refuses and decides to start fighting back.
I know.
So before I go on, is there any thoughts you want to have about all of them one-on-one fighting not doing so well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's on one hand, like, we see them working together at the very beginning, which is really cool, and obviously, like, teamwork is usually stronger in these cases than just using, like, individual powers one at a time.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's also showing that they're walking in underprepared, for what's happening. Totally. They probably weren't expecting Sinister at all to be there. I think they were expecting to get to Bastion easier, because I don't think they were expecting a whole bunch of Sentinels either.
No.
To show up, because, the EMP and power being off and all of those things, not realizing that he was creating some more, or I don't know, whatever he was doing. Or he was, because he has the technopathy, he was basically just controlling some shells. Also, he could have just been him inside all of that as well.
Yeah.
And it's also showing, like, the tide is turning. Like, they're in their Empire Strike Back's phase, where
you read my mind
losing.
on that one. Yep.
Everyone is losing.
And the bad guys are winning in the middle chapter. Right. Yep.
Plus, I mean, they are working together, but they're also a split X-Men team, since the rest are off in space, so it's not full power, sending them to Bastion, who also probably needs a full-powered team to really stand up to that, because of how much he can control.
Yeah.
And then to Jean and Sinister, I mean, was very interesting, because, Sinister does have that personal connection to Jean and is very creepy about it, because he knows everything about there. And him saying, like, I'll tell you when you were switched. That was probably, like, to all of us being like, we want to know.
We want to know. Yeah, exactly.
But, like, being like, that's probably the writers being like, yeah, the audience is going to have questions at this point, but we're not going to tell them still.
You'll never know, yeah.
We'll probably never know.
Oh, man. Yeah, because he was just toying with her. But what an epic fight between the two of them. I mean, they were just throwing punches back and forth, left and right, and psychic attacks, all that kind of stuff. But we're going to get into it right here, because Jean actually struggles at first to go toe to toe with him. I think she was taken off guard, like you said. They weren't expecting Sinister, so she's struggling a little bit in the battle. But then she does turn it around, and when he gets close, he gets in behind her, and she lands this massive psychic powered up punch to the gut, or maybe it was more like an elbow, and it sends him flying into the bowling alley, because there just happens to be a bowling alley on Muir Island. And so he's kind of stunned and dazed. He's down on his butt. And then she takes all the bowling balls in the alley and she starts zinging it at him one at a time, like supercharged psychic bowling balls, and they're hitting him in the head. Like, you could just hear them hitting him. They don't actually see it, but he's getting walloped. And then she rips an arcade machine off the wall and throws it at him. Yeah. I mean, it was cool. There was a lot happening here. She went all out. Again, she's also not holding back. But I want to ask you, I mean, you can react to that scene. You can give us your reaction to that scene. It was fun. But I want to ask you about her powers. What all can she do? I mean, because we see psychic shielding, we see flight, we see she throws psychic blades, psychic blasts, psychic barriers, arrows, all kinds of stuff. She throws everything with her psychic ability. Like she can actually take her telekinesis and create energy in the air that people can feel. It's not just moving objects. It's like she can create this psychic energy that can be used as a weapon itself. It's like telekinesis magnified. And she also can enhance her physical ability when she pairs it with her telekinesis, because she can make herself fly. Like I said, she elbows him in the stomach when she's surrounded by the psychic energy. It's amazing what she can do. She's got to be above Omega level as well. Like, everything, I don't know if you can break it down any more than that, but it seems to be like there's no lack of or limit to what she can do with it.
I mean, there's a reason why the Phoenix is so drawn to Jean, considering her powers. And I'm not going to give you the most well put together answer, but I would say that she can do whatever the imagination can do with telekinesis and telepathy.
Oh my god! Okay.
Whatever the writer's imagination comes up with. And I mean, she does have like some limits. We see certain things, but like she's not out here creating like telekinetic or telepathic like hard light structures or things of that nature. There is like some rules, I would say, compared to that, but yeah, I mean, like she has the force field bubbles all the time. Like she can fly with it. She can pick a bunch of other things up, like strength that she wouldn't normally have. Like she wouldn't be able to just lift a jukebox or arcade machine off the wall normally.
A dump truck or whatever.
Yeah, stopping buildings from tumbling, like all that good stuff.
It's all mental ability,
Yeah, but I guess like imagination, whatever your imagination, and her level of training can do, I would say. But yeah, like I mean, it was a fun scene. I think it's just a little bit of comedic feats with like the bowling alley stuff. But I love when she just like raises her hand and she's like, Madeline is fighting with me too, and it just like smacks him.
Or she throws a roof at him.
Yeah, like, getting back for the both of them.
Yeah, and when she's sliding around the street, you know, she does that big skid in a full circle and throws a truck at him, and like, oh my god, like it was a cool moment.
With like animation, like over like live action, I mean, you can do some really cool choreography in live action, but you know, with animation, when you're dealing with superpowers and different things of that nature, there's only so much you can do, like in the physical limits with live action. So like animation can do some really cool like choreography and stuff like that. So really interesting. And I know you pay attention to like choreography and a lot of things as well. And I'm sure even in the animation realm, you're paying attention to that stuff too.
Totally. And it looks good. They make it look really, really good here. And it's I have so much fun with the fight designs and what they dream up. Like you said, whatever their imagination or they can create, they're going so much more beyond what the original series ever gave us, and it's so fun. And,
I mean, for one, we have way more technology than they did 30 years ago with what they could do. They couldn't even like have some characters like turn around because of their character designs and how hard it was to animate them, and now we have people doing flips and weird things and turning into goo left and right and all of this kind of stuff. So.
Well, yeah, and then just like I keep bringing up, every episode seems to have a moment for one of the characters, and I think this was Jean's moment. We really got to see what she could do, and damn, it was cool. Oh man. So she temporarily takes Sinister out of the fight. She then goes looking for Cable in the woods, only to find that Sinister somehow got up from the bowling alley and got to Cable first, unless he got to him earlier.
Yeah.
Before he came to fight her, which is probably what happened. But he now has Cable under his control. And Cable starts attacking Jean first with his gun, and when she's defending it, he says, well, you know, my mother was also a world-class telekinetic, and that stuff doesn't tend to skip a generation. And you see his light, the light in his eye flare up, and he starts blasting her with some kind of, I'm just going to call it electrical telekinesis blast, because that wasn't just a psychic bubble he was throwing at her. There was lightning and all kinds of energy and stuff going at her, and she's having trouble defending against it. Holy crap, that was intense.
Yeah, I called this like the anime fight because it looked like it went like full on like anime for a moment.
For Cable, he looked.
Yeah, for Cable, like there was like a flash frame of him, like it was like a full white, and then it was just like the sketch of like him and the powers, and I was like, that is like pulled straight from anime. But I mean, before we get like to that moment, like the show seems to be using different colors to differentiate between the different characters that have telekinesis and telepathy, because we have at least 3 of them right now. I guess 4 if you want to count Sinister, because we've seen Jean's is blue. Every time she uses something, it's been blue. Madeline's was pink, and Cable's is this yellow color. So I think it's just interesting to have that, because normally like if you're seeing telekinesis or telepathy, like, you wouldn't be seeing anything in terms of, like, color wise. So it's just a way for the animation to really, really show that in a cool visual way.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I mentioned it before, but Cable does have those powers. He does have some telepathy and he does have telekinesis, but he doesn't use them as much because he does like his gear. He likes his hardware. But also because for his telekinesis, we usually don't see it too often because he is using it at all times to hold back the techno-organic virus in his body. He's using it to have it not overtake his body, so he's only able to usually use a little bit at a time, so he can't go full out like Jean or Madeline would. But here, yeah, under Sinister's control, he is just letting it completely loose. So, to me, I wonder if this is going to take Cable out next episode, though. Because if he's using it like full force here, that could cause the virus to kind of resurface in him, and it might start to overwhelm him again before he can get it back in check, and he might be taken out for a little bit.
And this leads, before we get to how this moment ended, this leads to a big question, though. Because Sinister says, I was waiting for you, ... to bring me what I truly was seeking. And that was Cable.
Nathan. Mm-hmm.
Their kid. Nathan. And now Sinister has him, and we saw that little diamond in Nathan's forehead. Mm-hmm. He is now fully under Sinister's control. I have this question at the end of the show, but where I'm curious is, did we just lose Cable? Has Sinister got what he wanted now? Cable is now fully one of his science experiment minions. Like, I'm really worried about that.
Yeah, because in Fire Made Flesh, Jean's able to snap Madeline out of it by reminding her of her memories of like Nathan and like the love she has in there, and that snaps her out and breaks the control. So for Cable, like, for me with the storyline and everything too, I can only assume that probably the thing that would snap him out is memories of Madeline and his mother. And the only person those could really come from at this moment is Jean. So I don't know. I don't know if we're going to see him get snapped out of it, or if he comes to himself, or whatnot. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see what happens there. There is... Yeah, no, that's all I'm going to say for now.
Okay. Well, let's get to what happens in this scene. He basically overpowers her with whatever this electrical psychic storm he's sending at her, and she realizes that she's losing the fight, and she calls out to Scott, who's up in space, and she says, Scott, I love you. And then we see him get to witness what she's going through, and he witnesses her get blasted. I think she loses her psychic bubble, can't withstand the blast, and you just see just a quick kind of explosion and her getting pushed backwards, and then that's it. It's gone, and he freaks out, Jean! And then he's back on the asteroid all of a sudden. Is she down and out? Did Cable just take Jean out? Did he kill her? Because, oh my god, if this show is teaching us anything, is that anybody could die at any moment. We're losing people. It is insane. Because why would she call out to Scott and say, I love you? Like, I think she knew she was going down here.
Uh-huh. Well, if there is one thing about Jean Grey, as Rogue joked about earlier in the episode, is that she dies a lot, but she also always comes back. So, I personally do not think that she's dead in this moment. She called out to Scott, to say something, and there's potentially, and I mean, I'll just say it now because we'll get to that moment, though, a little bit later, but there's a part of me that thinks that maybe, yes, we heard her only say I love you to Scott, but I think she might have been sending him a bit more of a message. Even if that was just, her showing Scott, like, hey, your son is being possessed by Sinister right now and is attacking me. But she could have also given more of a psychic message that we just didn't see or hear yet in that moment. But also, I mean, to an extent, we talked about Jean's powers and what she can do, and there's a part of me that also says she was just holding back. I mean, she was having a psychic phone call with Scott, who was in space, while Cable's blasting her, and she still has her force field up, too. She needed to let them know that to get, like I said, Nathan out of Sinister's control, but to me, because we've been seeing the clips in the intro all season, I think she's going to Phoenix out next episode.
Oh.
That's what I'm thinking, is that she lets Cable overwhelm her right now. Maybe make him and make Sinister think that she's down in this moment to get them off the back, and I have a feeling like she's just gonna Phoenix out. That's what I think we're gonna see next episode.
Can she turn into the Phoenix when she wants? Is that where she's at right now?
I mean, theoretically, like, thinking from the comics, like, not necessarily, but she's, even when she doesn't have, like, the Phoenix Force necessarily attached to her in that moment, or with her, like, she's always still, in some form, like, has that connection to the Force. So, it could be off in space,
the
or
Force.
wherever, yeah, the Force, the Phoenix Force, out. But I think if she is in enough emotional distress, or if she is in a mood where she can call out to it, then yeah, I think she can call upon the Phoenix to come help. So that's what I'm holding out for next episode, is we're just going to see Phoenix, because I mean, we've had those clips all season in the intro, and we all know these intro clips mean something, and we haven't seen anything necessarily with the Phoenix quite yet. I think that's what's going to happen. I think we're going to see it again.
Okay. Either way, it was a pretty epic moment, epic scene.
Yeah.
That was intense as hell. And I mean, even if Cable does kill her here and it's the Phoenix that has to revive her, I mean, still, it sucks to lose her, to watch her go down. I mean, yeah, she's always come back, but it's always been like under extreme circumstances that she's been able to come back. There's a chance she could die and be dead. There is no more coming back.
It is true. Or, I just thought about this. Because she probably does have, part of Madeline in her since Madeline died. If they go the route of like, yeah, we killed Jean, if they do that, then it could be part of her thinking Cable needs to see that he might have killed someone that's like his mother. Or if she happens to rise, like, what if we get, if there is any kind of death or the Phoenix rises, like, what if we get Madeline rising in her place instead of Jean too?
Whoa. But Madeline's dead.
Madeline is dead.
Yeah.
But Jean also does have Madeline's memories. So it could be this rogue situation where it's not in the same way, but it's like, what if, like, Madeline's personality takes over or something of that nature?
Okay.
Could be.
Huh.
I still think it's just going to be Jean and she's going to Phoenix out, but just thought of that. That could be a possibility.
That was
because I am still sad that Madeline died, so.
It would be epic if Phoenix, I mean, how else are you going to take out Bastion and all the Sentinels if not something even more powerful?
Right.
Like Phoenix.
I mean, there's got to be something more like that coming in.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Whew. Okay, well, we're not even done yet because
I know
this
there's
is just
so much.
One epic battle happening on the ground, but we got the space team. Meanwhile, up on the asteroid, I should say.
Meanwhile, at the Hall of Justice.
At the asteroid M, Xavier, Cyclops, Wolverine, and Jubilee and Nightcrawler arrive to find Magneto, with the hopes of talking him down, but Rogue and Sunspot intercept them and they start fighting each other. You see Rogue intercept Wolverine and take him down, and she says, "Relax, sugar." Or what did she say? We're fighting to kill. I can't remember what her line was. And then
you were fighting to kill.
Yeah,
she was trying to calm Wolverine down.
Yeah. And Sunspot and Jubilee end up facing off against each other. Crazy, like, just all hell is breaking loose in this episode. It's just going nuts. Going nuts. Our team is against each other, and I don't like it. They're fighting each other. And then you got Xavier, and he's saying the same old stuff. And we feel it as viewers. Magneto definitely feels it, because he basically says, "Charles, I'm going to say something that I've been wanting to say to you all my life. shut up.
Yeah.
Ouch. But wow, it was a funny ouch moment.
It was a beautiful moment. That's all I'll say in that moment. It was so funny hearing him say shut up.
All this time, all these years, that's all he's ever wanted to say, because Xavier does kind of go on and on and on too much sometimes.
Yes. All the pontificating.
Oh.
So much of it.
And so what do you think about this whole opening crash on the asteroid? Like, they're fighting each other. Rogue taking out Wolverine, and it's crazy. It's just a crazy moment.
I mean, teammate fighting teammate. It's one of those situations. So,
yeah.
And like, I mean, we mentioned it, but like Wolverine comes in like claws a-blazing instead of guns a-blazing. But Rogue is like, hey, calm down. Like, you're playing to kill. Like, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
At least at this point, because I don't think Rogue would have a problem with killing at this point. As we've seen. But not with, not Magneto. She doesn't want to see that happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we're in that kind of like dire straits moment, like where everyone is just emotional and trying to figure out what to do, and we're kind of in a situation of where people don't really know what to do. I mean, the whole world's power has been turned off, friend against friend, all of this stuff is happening. So it's just a very interesting place for them to all be at this point.
Such as we are in this episode too, an interesting place, because these last few moments are so action-packed and action-heavy oriented that there's not a lot to super dive into. So I'm just going to really kind of just talk about what we're seeing, and you can react to it, and we'll get into our, the ending moments eventually. But we at first see that this team can't do much against Magneto, anything at all, really. But in his battle with Xavier, Wolverine is able to close in and gets him in a headlock. But Magneto is able to push him around, like push him back with a magnetic blast or whatever you want to call it. As he does that, though, Wolverine manages to rip the helmet off his head. And that then allows Xavier to reach his mind, finally, because that helmet protects Magneto from Xavier. Once it's off, Xavier can get to him. And Xavier says, I'm sorry, I have to do this, Magnus. And he just starts attacking him with some type of mental projection. But what is going on here? Because it looks like Magneto is being electrocuted from the inside out. That's the visual we have. What is Charles doing here to Magnus? Is he frying his brain? Is he freezing him mentally? How would you describe what's happening there? Because it looks like an electrocution from the inside.
Yeah, so, I mean, I talked about just earlier that all of the like telepaths, telekinetics have like specific colors tied to their powers, and so Xavier's is the same as Jean's. His is also blue when he in his telepathy. So that's a little interesting that he doesn't have another color. But what he said is that if it came down to it, if they couldn't convince Magneto himself to reverse and fix the magnetic field, that he would have to hijack Magneto's mind so that he could get control of it to try to reverse what he did to the Earth. So basically control him and use his powers in that way. So I think that's what he was trying to do. It looked extremely painful. It looked like he was hurting Magneto. And usually when Xavier can get into the mind of someone else and can control them, we don't really see pain like that. So,
and that's probably why he says, I'm sorry for doing this, Magnus.
Yeah. So I assume that's what he was doing, is he was trying to, since Magneto was basically not letting up, refusing to help, that he was going to get into his brain to try to make him do it.
Okay. It sucked for Magneto in that moment. Like you said, it looked like it was hurting. And we've never seen Xavier intentionally hurt somebody. So there's a lot going on here that is just, that's why I said, this episode was so shocking, because we're seeing things that we've just never seen from our X-Men and the things that they're having to do. But in that moment, while he's doing this to Magneto, Cyclops actually blasts Xavier's chair, sending him flying back to stop him, saying that the Gold Team needs more time. And I'm just, in that moment, because we immediately see Magneto stand up and he's bouncing back immediately, and all I could ask is, why would Cyclops do that? They've got Magneto beat. They're winning the battle. This could end everything. Why would he do that? This was very, very similar to Star-Lord screwing up the entire Avengers team when they had Thanos beat, when everybody was grappling with him and Spider-Man was pulling off the Infinity Gauntlet. They had him beat until Star-Lord had to go and get jealous over Gamora and, oh, you hurt my girlfriend, and he completely, and Thanos turned it around and snapped his finger, and that was the end of that movie. This reminded me of that so much, that this allowed Magneto to turn the tide back to his favor and basically essentially win the fight. All I can say is why? Yeah. Cyclops.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, he gets pulled into Jean's psychic message, and he sees that she's having trouble, that Cable is possessed, that, like, they're losing. They're not anywhere close to completing their goal of getting the Scrambler on Bastion. So, I mean, to an extent, and you already said it, like, he does say that the gold team needs more time. And so I think from Cyclops' point of view, if Xavier had succeeded at this moment, if Magneto had turned the magnetic field back on and fixed it, the gold team would have probably been overrun by Sentinels at that moment if they had been able to be turned back on, because Bastion would be able to control them all again, and with the gold team not getting the Scrambler on him, he would have had control. So he was probably seeing, like, they actually need to complete their goal before we complete our goal, thinking in that tactical sense. But also, I mean, to an extent, he might have also just been looking at what Professor was doing and being like, you're going too far. Like, I may be mad at you, but you're my professor, you're a father figure to me. I'm seeing what you're doing, and that might have been too far for Cyclops in that moment as well. I don't know. But, I mean, the way they showed is that he was like, gold team is down, they're not, I might have just lost Jean, and I may have just lost my son. So he was probably also thinking in that sense, too, that he might have had an emotional reaction in that moment. He's like, I can't lose my father figure in this moment also. So it could have been all of that, just, like, boiled down.
All at once. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Still reminded me of the Thanos situation, but...
Yeah.
I mean... From that moment, Magneto regains control, and he throws his helmet onto Charles's head, which I'm assuming still works the same way. It would stop Charles from being able to use his mental abilities. Yeah. If he's got that dampening helmet on there, that would make sense to me. But I also think he was also slowly making the helmet smaller. I felt like he was crushing Xavier's head.
Yeah, that's what it looked like to me, too.
Like, you hurt me, I'm going to hurt you now. That's crazy. Crazy.
I know.
So, while he does that to Xavier, he's also trapping everybody else in just metal debris from all around the space station. He slams Jubilee and Wolverine, or not Wolverine, Jubilee and everybody up against the wall. They got metal body cuffs on, basically. Except Wolverine. That's the only one he doesn't trap, which kind of surprised me. Maybe he just missed him, or Wolverine cut through the metal. I don't know, but...
At that point, Wolverine was still knocked out after Magneto threw him after he got his helmet off.
Oh, so maybe he felt he didn't have to trap him? Mm-hmm. Okay. But here's the thing, Shadowcat. After 40 years, we have never seen Wolverine actually get to stab someone and run them through with his claws. Live action animation, we've never seen this happen. Well, especially in the animation.
It's been live action we have, but not in the animation.
Yeah, in the rated R Wolverine movie, yeah. But I mean, in the animation, it's been something that people have always griped about Wolverine. When we talked about on the show, what's the point of his claws? What's the point of anything with Wolverine if he never actually does anything? And here we are. We see him jam one fist right through the back of Magneto, and the claws come out, and there's blood dripping. He went for the kill. But somehow, I don't know if maybe he didn't stab him through the heart, maybe he just stabbed him in the gut. The side. It was really hard to tell kind of the angle that it was at.
Yeah.
Magneto was still in control of his abilities. He reverses the move by taking over Wolverine's skeleton, his metal skeleton. He shoves him back, retracts his claws, and just as we thought he always might do, he rips Wolverine's body apart by pulling all the metal out of his body. Holy damn, this cartoon just got mature rated. They didn't show it a lot. It was kind of like a stop motion image, but you could see the blood, the metal, Wolverine's body being torn apart. I am completely speechless after seeing that.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, with Wolverine stabbing Magneto, I mean, like, that I was surprised seeing. I mean, it was blood all over his claws. You heard, like, the squelching of, like, him ripping through, like, the flesh, and I was like, oh my gosh. Like, yeah, this is not TAS. This is not the original series.
And Magneto was, like, you could see his eyes were popping out of his head.
Like,
he was like
there was blood running down his mouth. Like, all this is happening. And then Wolverine, you know, says to him, like, he's been in a lot of wars, and the brave are always the first to die, which is actually a parrot of Magneto saying that exact same line of the Braves are always the first to die. He says that in the finale of the season 1 of the original series.
Oh, man.
He says that to the X-Men when they're flying away to fight Master Mold. So basically Wolverine is using Magneto's own words against him in this moment. And then you see Magneto almost like calm for a moment, and he says, finally, this feud is over.
And is he talking about the feud between him and Wolverine because they've never liked each other, or is he talking about him against the X-Men?
I took that as him against, almost like him against living, is a little bit of how I took it. Like the pain that he's gone through with living. And I asked this as a question of, like, is this because of, you know, what we've seen? Everything Magneto has lived through. You know, like, he was a child in the Holocaust and then living as a mutant who's been oppressed for his entire life, and then seeing Genosha, being a captive of Bastion, seeing the Prime Sentinels, all this stuff. Like, at this point, was Magneto, like, so far gone in terms of, like, I don't have any more hope. Like, I have Asteroid M right now, but I still don't have a lot of hope. Was this him feeling like there's a chance that he wanted to die, but he couldn't do it himself?
Magneto, you mean?
Yeah.
So do you think Wolverine did actually manage to kill him, and that was Magneto's, like, last breath? You kill me, I'm going to kill you, kind of thing.
We will get a little bit more to that, a little bit down in kind of final thoughts area.
Okay.
Like, a part of that read, because him saying feud is over just to Wolverine, to me that doesn't make a lot of sense. Even though, he's, you know, X-Men versus Brotherhood, all of this stuff, they fought a lot.
That's how I kind of took it.
Okay.
Because they have never liked each other. They've always hated each other.
Yeah.
And they've always wanted to kill each other. And I think the reason I took it is because Wolverine finally got to run him through, and Magneto gets his one last attack, and he's like, finally, this feud is over. Between you and me, we're killing each other. It's over. That's kind of how I took it, but I mean, I'm sure there's other ways to see it, which you're going to tell me about.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, there's a part that I can see that. There's a part of me that took it as, like, yeah, this feud of, you know, human versus mutant that I've been fighting this whole time is finally over. For me. Okay. Like, for him personally.
Because you're thinking he's going to die in that. Like, yeah, okay.
Potentially.
Interesting.
And so this moment of Magneto ripping the adamantium out of Wolverine, it is a very big moment from the Fatal Attraction storyline in the comic books. So I brought that up multiple times, and this is like the big definitive moment that everyone remembers from that. Because you said it was almost like stop motion, like the way it looks, the way Wolverine is like posed with all of the metal coming out of him is like exact from the panel from when that happens in the book. So this is not on necessarily like the show's part, but I unfortunately saw Bo DeMeo, who is the former showrunner, tweet about like, look at the storyline if you want a hint about this episode. And I saw that and I said, oh, I know exactly what's happening. I knew it was leading towards this, and this is part of where, like, when it started happening, I was like not surprised.
Oh man, see that ruins it for you. This is why I avoid social media and all that garbage, because that moment got ruined for you.
I can't avoid it with my job. That I have to be kind of on social, and like my personal stuff just like drifts onto my feed, and I was like,
oh man,
like I have to I guess I'm happy that he's tweeting about the X-Men, but like to an extent he's like spoiling things by his own tweets of like what to do for homework assignments and things of what he's calling it. So I'm like, oh, I wish I hadn't have seen that. So I would have been more surprised when it actually showed up in the episode.
Yeah, but still, just looking at it happen in animation though, instead of a single comic panel, you saw this play out animated. That still had to have some shock to it.
Yeah, I think the bigger shock than the like final frame of all of the metal being out of his body and his costume being ripped to shreds was the shot right before it, where he's like sprawled on the ground, and you can start seeing like the blood vessels and things.
Everything's like starting to burst.
That one, I was like, oh my god, because like even though Wolverine has a healing factor, like that has to be insanely painful because he still feels the pain. But
there's gonna be some things he can't heal from. There has to be.
Yeah. That one made me go like because I hate medical things. So I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
So that shot got me.
Okay.
Okay, but before we get into our final thoughts on the episode here, this is just my last like thinking of why I was a little on the fence with some of the stuff in the episode. And it was some of the stuff we've talked about, some of it already, but just some of the ways that they had Magneto characterized. And he's very traumatized at this point. And he favors mutants over humans. That's very true of him in all senses. But the thing to me, I guess, is like, why did he immediately go to Asteroid M? And like, why didn't he try to go after Bastion after the EMP? It is like one of my biggest questions. Because he knew Bastion was the biggest threat in this moment, after he took out the Primes, he got rid of those. And he was personally tortured by him, and Magneto does not let those things go, like, ever, when he has that. So I don't understand why he would have just left him alone to go to Asteroid M at this point, why he wouldn't try to go after Bastion first. And then the other thing is that we don't see Magneto go try to get any more mutants for Asteroid M. He goes to recruit the X-Men and see who wants to join. But then that was it. It was just the two of them when he's already up into space with the asteroid. And that part is what felt out of character of him for me. I feel like we were like missing a bit, and this could have been, how much was already packed into the episode. Or, again, I know we've talked pacing and things, and I wish we had maybe like a 13 episode order instead of 10, because we would have got probably some things just a little more fleshed out.
Yeah.
But like we didn't see him go to like the ruins of Genosha and try to pick up the mutants that were left there. We don't see him to try to gather any other acolytes or anything in that nature. And that was what was bugging me, I think, the most, is that he just has Rogan Sunspot. He just went to the X-Men and offered like 6 mutants kind of salvation off of Earth. But we didn't really get to see him try to go gather more mutants. And he would try to probably save as many as he could off of Earth if it's dying. So that was just, I think for me, I would have liked to have seen something else there if we had the time to kind of flesh that out.
Well, I wonder, you said he's in his own emotional trauma right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the X-Men in the short time this season has kind of become his family. He did break a lot of new ground with Scott, with Rogue, with Gambit even. Like they all developed a connection. So maybe in the end, he's thinking, the Earth is dying. I'm just going to try to save my most immediate family. Whoever wants to join me, X-Men, come on. Maybe he's thinking Bastion's knocked out. Maybe he didn't realize the EMP didn't stop him. Maybe he thought, okay, I got him. While the Earth is dying, I'm going to take my whatever few mutants that want to join me. We're going to go to the asteroid and we're going to survive. Maybe that's all that was.
Good. Yeah, and I mean, it could back up a little more of the sense of if he was feeling like, I don't have much hope left, like this is it, then, he's got Rogue there with him, that he's got, some spot wet with, and he's probably like, I'm not fighting for much else, like I've got this, and, that's all I'm going to have to be happy with. So it could still be him wanting to potentially be, stop fighting. This is it. This could be all of it. So, I don't know. So,
It's part of his final word. Enough.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. Let's get into our final thoughts. I'm still left in shock at what we saw. And I got some questions here. Did we just lose a few more team members? Did we lose Jean? Did we lose Wolverine? Is Cable now gone? It really, really left you hanging. And Storm, is she dead? They warned us that some stuff was coming. That Gambit was just the beginning and it's going to get worse. So there's a possibility we might not get a couple of these guys back.
Yeah. So we mentioned it, but, Cable could be down and out for this last episode. If it's the sense of either the techno-organic virus coming back, since he's went full power on his TK and he's not holding that back, or if he ends up still staying in control of Sinister and doesn't get broken out this last episode. Wolverine, at minimum, should be in a med bay somewhere, because, that much pain, that much, trauma to his body, like getting the adamantium ripped out, like he's gonna go at least feral or run off if he's not stuck in a bed in a coma for a while, trying to heal.
Yeah. He's not unbreakable now anyway.
Yeah. I already said it. I do think Jean is going to Phoenix out next episode.
Okay.
But yeah, Storm, Forge, we saw them crashing, both of them. So if they're not, I'd be sad if Storm was down again because they just had her out and depowered for a while. But, Forge, could be down for a little bit too. Beast, the last we saw Beast, he was strung up by all of the mechanical stuff. Yeah, we have no idea. And we had big stakes with Genosha and Gambit dying, so I can't see someone else, at least one other person, not walking away from this and making it through the season. So even if that's Magneto, if Wolverine did actually kill him, if it's one of these other people we just talked about, I can't see at least one other person not dying.
Yeah.
With the stakes here.
Yeah. Who are they willing to get rid of?
I know. That's the question.
Oh my God. Better not be Rogue. I know we don't really know what happened to her. She didn't get... She wasn't really okay. She wasn't in those last couple moments. She got blasted back by Magneto's attack on everybody else, but we didn't see her after that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. So, this show is not holding back. Things fans have always criticized, have always asked for, and have always wondered about, like everything we've been talking about. Wolverine actually using his claws on people. Magneto ripping the metal out of him, or even just whipping him around and using him like a punching bag because he's made of metal. The team actually losing the battle. Like you said, Empire Strikes Back. We lost. The bad guys won here. We see it all in this episode. All these things that we never thought we'd ever see. We got it all, and there's still one episode left.
Yep, and I have a few things to say in a couple of minutes, but to what exactly is going to happen, I don't know. Up in the air. What happened to characters? Up in the air. So,
well, here's some questions for you that I'm going to present. How will everyone that's left react to what just happened? What's the fallout going to be from all of that? Will they have to join together finally? Like, they just fought each other. Do they have to realize they got to join each other to beat Bastion? Because all hope is lost right now. Mm-hmm. Instead of fighting each other, because by doing that, Bastion wins easily. They have to come to the realization they've got to come together to beat him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the only way, really, because they tried this splitting it up, doing 2 different missions at once in this one. Obviously, that did not go well. They were not at full power, and I think, some people on the other team would help in those situations more, but I mean, they have to band together to defeat Bastion at this point, because nothing else has worked. Like, they haven't even right now they've gotten, I guess, close, but not close enough to get the Scrambler on him, to figure out how to negate his powers with his technopathy, and, Sentinels. There's still all of that running around. There is so much with one episode left that they're going to have to deal with. And there has to be continued fallout into the next season. I feel like not necessarily everything is going to get wrapped up in this one episode, considering it'll be 30 minutes. So there's definitely, I assume Bastion will be defeated in some manner, some form. But the Prime Sentinels, people waking up from that or getting their humanity might not necessarily happen in this episode. The whole world working to get society running, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen there. That's it's so huge. I just really don't have any speculation too much there.
Yeah, there's too much. There's too much that has to be fixed. Yeah. And we might not get it fixed in the finale. The finale might end with a massive cliffhanger and
it could,
you don't know where we're going kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Now that they know they've got, they knew they had a second season, but yeah, it's insane. It's insane where they're going to leave us and how much dire straits we're in right now. Yes. I mean, I have never, in all these other TV shows I've been watching the last few years, I have never felt in such a dire situation where I just don't feel like we're going to come out of this okay. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely crazy.
Because I know, comic book wise, in the OZT, the Operation Zero Tolerance storyline, it's a little anticlimactic.
Yeah.
Because Kelly, he just ends up convinces everyone to shut down OZT, and Bastion kind of goes into S.H.I.E.L.D. custody until he enacts his next plan. It's not like he's destroyed or anything at that point. So I definitely don't see something quiet happening like that. I don't think anyone would want that at that point, to see something quiet happening.
It's too big. It's way too big.
We don't have S.H.I.E.L.D. or anything yet, as far as I know, in this universe. But there is fighting wise, I guess they could still get the Scrambler on him, and then it would just be him against the X-Men and not all the Sentinels and stuff. But I guess with the themes that we've been seeing and the questions we've been asking of, is Bastion considered a mutant in this regard? Is he biological in this sense? Is he not just machine? I could see, to an extent, I don't necessarily think it's the route they're going to go, but I could see a possibility of somehow Bastion coming to see, being convinced that he became, what he hated, or him realizing oh crap, I am a mutant and I've been trying to destroy mutants this whole time, and then he shuts down the Sentinels on his own, this. But we've seen nothing that hints at that at this point. Bastion's been very calm and steady in his plans and that. But again, my other theory is that Jean shows up as the Phoenix and hurls him into space. So I don't know. I really don't know what the plan is to take Bastion down at this
which
point.
He could survive and probably go find some alien space tech and come back even worse.
Yeah, him and Deathbird team up, and then there we go.
Oh my god. Okay, we're only a few days away. We'll get to see how they partially wrap all this up.
Mm-hmm.
But we got some theories listed out here, some things we can discuss about where it possibly could go, and that's how we're going to wrap up our discussion.
Yeah, and these are theories of not necessarily how this storyline is going to end, with Bastion, but potential things that they could be setting up for a season 2. or things that have already been like slightly built into the storylines and stuff that we might see. And this is me also just like speculating and being like, ooh, reading in too deeply to like one thing. So,
Okay.
we already talked about it, but I think there's a possibility that Magneto is going to end up dying from Wolverine's wound here. And I could see a potential last dying request from him, or not even a request, potentially just a last choice that Rogue might have to make is, since she's there, she can take his powers and she can restore, the magnetic field by using his powers.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And that would probably kill him because she would have to absorb enough of him to be able to do that. And that would be... So she loses Gambit and now she has to kill Magneto? Oh my god.
It would be a very another tragic end to Rogue's story for that.
God.
But like I could potentially see that happening if like they share one last like conversation like moment like that, if he is actually dying. Like I could see that happening.
Wow. Gut-wrenching. Holy.
Yeah. Okay. So this next one I'm gonna get into some of the comic book stuff that has not been brought up on the show. But just from knowing the comics and potential speculation of where this could go, because we've seen it.
This isn't spoilery, is it?
I won't go very heavily into what it means. I'll just mention a name that say that.
Okay.
So I won't spoil what happens.
Because if they're following the comics pretty closely, I don't really want to be spoiled about where this could go. So hopefully you can skirt it a little bit so that it's not giving anything away, because I don't want to be thinking about what might be coming.
Yeah, don't think about it. So Xavier, we've seen Xavier and Magneto completely at odds here, and we're seeing them like the tipping point of them being at odds. So with Xavier, we see in this episode Xavier is trying to hijack Magneto's mind, and with the potentially Magneto possibly dying if he does, or at least if he does this, Xavier does have the potential to mind wipe, or at least potentially mind wipe people. And so I'm just going to mention a name, but I won't spoil what happens, I guess. But I could see this leading to a potential in a next villain setup as a person named Onslaught. So if you're
I don't know
familiar with that name or not?
Onslaught, no.
Okay. But yeah. Magneto and Xavier being like this much head to head, and what I know happens in the comics, just think of the name, just have the name Onslaught in your mind, just in case we go in that direction. Okay.
I mean, the reason I don't, because you got spoiled because
I did.
Bo basically told you what was coming. So that means they're following things pretty well, and that's why I don't want to be spoiled. Because if you have all this pre-knowledge of where it looks like they're going, that's kind of ruining it for you too. If you're already knowing what's happening. But
it's also fun it is fun to theorize sometimes. But
yeah, I don't mind theories, but I don't want it based on. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, so just you're going to be very very fluffy in how you present this.
Yeah. So the next couple aren't super spoily. They're just me like veering off into space on what could happen.
Okay.
So we've seen Captain America appear here.
Yeah.
In this already, and he mentions that he does have a team, but we haven't seen the full Avengers team. But it feels like that they're setting up that they're out there in this world. And also, where the heck are you? When the whole world gets shut down, where are you, Avengers? But
exactly, because Iron Man wouldn't work right now.
No, his suit would not work unless there's hand-wavy Tony Stark magic tech like Forge has.
Yeah. Oh, Forge is my brother from another mother. Yeah. No,
yeah. But I wonder if that we could see them next episode, though, if they have to deal with the fallout of the X-Men or the X-Men failing, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But thinking into a next season, they could have the potential with knowing that they're out there, and as we said, there's so much fallout that's going to happen, and the humans that are left, I don't know how they're going to react to mutants at this point. I can't see them reacting to mutants in a very good light.
Well, no, because the mutants just about killed the world, so yeah.
Right. Yeah, now they see, like, the potential powers of what these people can do.
Yep.
So I wonder if they might be leading to some version of an Avengers versus X-Men in this next season.
Which I brought up a few episodes ago when Cap showed up. I was like, ooh.
I know.
That could be
but,
fun.
Like, seeing what we see now since then, like, it feels very prevalent that they could be doing the mutants need to be in check, and, like, the Avengers are the ones that are going to do that since they have the powers that can handle it.
Right.
So I wonder if they would be.
It's okay for them to have superpowers and not be in check, but we got to control mutant people with powers. Like, that's a whole other argument. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so do I bring up this one? This one's slightly spoilery, but
I don't know. I haven't read any of it, so.
Okay, good. Just don't look at my notes, Martin.
Okay.
So there's been I mentioned Apocalypse a couple of times because, for one, we've seen him in the intro with Cable fighting him a few times. He's a big Cable opponent. He's a big Bishop opponent because of future timelines and Apocalypse being in a lot of the future timelines.
Right.
So, and with two of the characters that I know have served as some of his horsemen.
Angel was one.
Yes, Angel has been one. I'm not talking about Angel at the moment, but
okay.
Two characters in this season are in particular positions to potentially become horsemen for Apocalypse. So there's a potential. I wouldn't love it. Apocalypse isn't my favorite, but there is a potential for, like, oh, things got really worse. A lot of humans are dying. Apocalypse is out there somewhere because he in the original series he got resurrected and then he's just been around. So he could swoop in and be like, I'm using this to take over the Earth, and we're going to get an Age of Apocalypse storyline happen.
Still, pretty damn big story. Holy.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Very cool.
Okay, this one isn't very spoilerly because it is more modern comic-wise, but... and this one is me, like, very much spitballing out into the nothingness of me just pulling on tiny threads. But they could be potentially doing a version or pulling inspiration from the Second Coming and Messiah Complex storylines in the comic books.
I don't know that.
Yeah. So, because Bastion is a part of the Second Coming storylines. These have to do with a character named Hope, who is one of the first mutants born after House of M, after M Day. So that's when Scarlet Witch creates an alternate reality where there's no mutants and all this stuff, and a bunch get depowered. But because we have the mutant population being decimated here by the attack on Genosha, and also presumably by Prime Sentinel attacks before they got shut off. So if they run with something of that kind of a concept, with needing to find new mutants, needing to find who's still out there, what the population is like, they could do something along the lines of what they did with Second Coming, and where the X-Men actually make a base on the crashed asteroid M instead of the X-Mansion. So at this point, the asteroid, it's crashed and it's partially submerged in the Pacific Ocean right off of the coast of San Francisco. And they have all the mutants move there for a little bit instead of using, like, the X-Mansion as their base. Could be a fun shakeup since they're shaking up literally everything else. And like I said, Bastion's involved in that, and Cable's also very prominent in that storyline too. So I wonder if they would do some sort of route inspired by that.
Okay.
So and then this last one, I talked briefly about Shi'ar Tech possibly being an answer to the cure for Prime Sentinels.
Which would make complete sense.
It would at this point, and it would make sense why they brought them back so heavily away, aside from Xavier needing to come back. But Xavier's out in space right now on the asteroid. Maybe he calls back out to Lilandra with their galactic telepathy.
Yep.
And maybe tries to have the Shi'ar come and try to heal them in the same sense that he was healed, or create some sort of antidote to heal the Prime Sentinels.
Although the Shi'ar don't think humans are worthy of anything.
Right.
So
Lilandra's still kind of in the corner, but the rest of the Shi'ar not so much.
Yeah. Interesting.
Because we haven't dealt with the fallout of the broadcast of Xavier and Lilandra, being out in the world when Bastion put that out last episode, that hasn't really necessarily been tied in extremely yet. I know that was used to kind of fuel public hatred and all of that too, but that could be a way to tie things in. And I don't know, in Xavier's thinking or someone's thinking that if they try to smooth things over with the human-mutant relations, it could be a way by offering a cure, like, hey, we can help you not be a Sentinel anymore.
Yeah.
Or that could go an opposite way. Obviously, have been like, mutants are working with aliens. No, thank you. And I think Deathbird is a lingering threat out there too. Could be an opportunity to still take the throne from Melandra. So, just a bunch of threads hanging out there in the background that could come back. Because I truly don't know what's happening.
Well, it's because they presented all these little points throughout all the different episodes this season. So it seems like the writing is so strong that they're throwing these things in there because they might come around again.
Yeah, so let me know, everyone out there, if you're like, those have credence, or if you're like, nope, you're just reading into things.
Yeah.
Or we want to know what yours are before next week.
Yeah, like what are your predictions? And again, trying to predict without saying how much you know, because I don't know a lot of this stuff based on modernized comics, but man, oh man, I mean, it's so shocking. This episode just blew me away and left me jaw to the floor, speechless with where they went in this episode, and I can barely just contain my shock. It's insane.
Yeah,
it's insane. Let's take a quick pause for an ad break. It's probably happened once or twice already, and I don't always remember to warn you guys about it, but we're going to do that right now, and then we're going to come back to Lockheed's lair and our favorite scenes.
Don't you agree?
Did you pull anything out for Lockheed's lair this time? I mean, we've been talking for 3 hours already. There can't be anything left.
There's just 2 small Easter eggs here that I have.
Okay.
So, first one, and these one are like true Easter eggs as opposed to everything else that I've just been side noting throughout the episode. But the first one is when Jubilee is holding up Roberto's business card again. The address on the card is 1 Claremont Avenue. And so I know I've mentioned Chris Claremont multiple times on the show.
Yep.
Yeah. Very prolific X-Men writer. And he's also the writer that created Sunspot. So that's kind of fun.
Oh, well, there you go. That's perfect.
Yeah. So there's one. And then the second one is when they're in the town, Bastion's little creepy rundown town. There's a sign that gets blasted through that says DeMayo's Diner. And so that's probably in reference to Bo DeMayo, who is the showrunner, executive producer.
And he got fired from the show, so they're going to blast through his sign.
He did. Yeah.
Symbolism, people, symbolism.
Yeah. Well, that would have been created long before he got fired. So.
Man. Right.
But yeah, those are the only 2 little Easter eggs there.
There was too much in this episode for anything else.
Yeah, too much.
All right, well, let's bring it back to some of those emotional moments as we get into our favorite scenes.
What's wrong, Cher?
You know what happens when I touch somebody. You want to end up in the hospital?
Maybe it's worth it, no?
All right. We're going right back to that massive moment that we both agree on is the best moment in the episode, and this is when Magneto arrives at the X-Men grounds with his asteroid, and he's trying to bring them all back. So, do you want to introduce the clip, or should we just play it?
I'm just going to say that I called it God Complex, and we're just going to sit back and listen to the whole thing, because it's that good.
All right.
Part of me wonders if Gambit should have been buried here, on our grounds. He was always trying to outrun his past with the Thieves Guild.
Remy was the most Cajun man I ever met. As much as he wanted to escape the bayou, he knew our lives are about what bits of us we leave behind and what we carry into the future. Maybe if you saw us as people and not students, you'd have realized that.
I'm so sorry, Rogue. For you, for Remy, Moira, so many. And despite the power of words, Nothing spoken can heal this pain. Heavens! Magnus!
Looks like the search came to us.
Please, not this, Magnus. Be reasonable.
I am not the one who needs to be reasoned with, Charles.
There is a large asteroid hovering over my home that begs otherwise.
Your home? When you abandoned us for your Shi'ar bird queen, you bequeathed it to me, asked me to walk your path. Are you prepared to walk mine?
Magnus, your path leads to total destruction for both humans and mutants. You must undo the damage you've done.
Will humanity undo Genosha? Old friend, you should have seen it. It was just as you said that day in the bar. Promise. Realized.
We have a plan to stop Bastion, but we must also repair Earth.
I promised a boy a future free of fear, only to watch his frightened eyes be vaporized inside his tiny skull. Because he believed in me. In the dream you had me sell. How many more of your bones will pave the way to Xavier's future? Where we simper like beggars for tolerance. Your professor's dream is dead. So I offer a new one. A home to replace what they stole from us. A new Genosha. We have gotten here by walking this man's path. We are left with but two choices. Cling to this dying world, or rise to your future and look down upon this fallen pigsty planet.
We are not gods, Magnus!
Gods abandon those who believe in them. Mutants do not. Decide, my X-Men.
Hulk, no!
In Genosha, I made a choice. To lead our kind to a new age. I stand by that choice.
Rogue, do not turn your back on family.
You were gone, gal. None of you were there the day Genosha fell. Who dies next, Professor? Jean? Been there, done that. Who knows where Bishop is? And hell, Morph was barely on the team 30 minutes before we tossed them to the wolves. Jubilee? Roberto? I will not see any more mutants die.
Roberto.
My mom handed me over to the Prime Sentinels, Jubilee. They collared me. My own family. What's left here?
Me?
The offer was made. The door is open.
Oh my god, like the music, the undertones of the cello or whatever's playing there, and that is just palpable.
I know, it's like a 5-minute scene, but like you can't cut any of that. Like it's so good. Like I'm jealous that someone else wrote that.
Just everything that was spoken in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable. Oh my god, yeah. I don't know what else we can say about it. It was just so damn good.
I think we're gonna have to go on to your favorite scene now.
Yes, there was another moment that I thought was absolutely beautiful in this episode. This is when they're on the shuttle heading into battle. Storm and Jean have a little bit of a moment, ensuring each other of their sisterly bond. And I just love how Storm makes her feel okay about stuff. Here's the clip I call Sisters.
Forge and I will draw their focus in the air. The rest of you continue to the ground.
No, that's an army out there.
I thought of you while away. Of when my sister faced her darkness and emerged. Stronger. A survivor. A phoenix. All this change. It's all the same. Let us do what we do. Believe, not in a dream or our gifts, but in each other.
Make them mind your weather, sister.
And them weather your mind.
I love the voice actress for Storm. The sound of her voice and the way she emulates, it's so beautiful.
Yeah. Makes you very much believe that Storm is a goddess in these moments.
And I met her. I got to spend some time with that woman and talk to her and see Storm face to face. And she's
nice.
She's such a beautiful woman. Just her whole vibe about her and her energy. She is Storm. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that conversation, I know we were talking offline, that was my backup in case you had chosen my favorite scene, and then we kind of both chose the same two scenes, so it was great that worked out.
Yeah.
Because, it is like a beautiful moment between them, especially since their conversation in, episode 2, kind of hearkening back to that. I guess that was Madeline, but you know what I mean. But... yeah, it's just great, and I love the mind your weather your mind.
Yeah.
Just that play on words is really great.
Really, really well done. Good stuff. Well, we got to get into some feedback, because we do have a little bit, but before we do, we just want to remind you how you can support the show.
If you'd like to support our podcast, you can do so at our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/tomorrowslegends.
I could just phase through the gizmo and quietly short it out.
Don't keep it to yourself now. Come on, baby, talk to us. It's feedback. Yeah.
I just don't have a big, epic, dramatic, depressing feedback jingle.
Like a really foreboding one.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to see if Dan has some creativity in him, can do that. I'm just gonna start it off with, we got a YouTube comment on one of our episodes, Abby.
Our preview one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, someone was talking about, but Spooky Skelly Girl says, it's the 2020s. You can be rogue if you want to. And she's obviously, I'm referring to me saying I could have been Rogue on the show, but instead I'm going to be Havoc, because, and I guess, your comment is true, but I don't know. Me personally, I've just never been into the whole cross-playing thing. Rogue is Rogue. I'm a guy. I like women, and I have a crush on Rogue. I don't want to be Rogue. I just have to leave it at that.
It's fine. People gender bend cosplays all the time.
Yeah,
so,
it's called crossplay.
It's fine. Crossplay,
so
it's fine. Be whoever you want to be.
Exactly. But thanks for chiming in. I mean, I'm just glad you're checking us out.
Glad you're listening.
On YouTube. Yeah, for sure. Next up is a voicemail from X-Force 11.
Well, hello, X-Men fans. It's Jeff, X-Force 11, leaving my feedback about Tolerance is Extinction Part 2. And it was really cool to see the blue team and the gold team like we had back in the day in the comics, and to get to see everybody really powered up and fighting. But once again, the penultimate episode leaving everyone in dire shape. We have Wolverine's adamantium being ripped from his body like we saw in the comics. And we have Cable under Sinister's control. We've got Bastion, who's got everybody else on the ropes. It is just awesomely bad for our teams right now. And everyone having to cross lines with former friends and colleagues. And it's just so powerful. I really think they blew it out of the water this year with this season. And I cannot wait to see the finale and what they've got planned for us in season 2. All right, those are my thoughts. X-Force is out.
You worded that perfectly, X-Force. They blew us out of the water. What could they possibly have left for the finale?
We'll find out in a couple of days.
Oh my god, my jaw hurts because it keeps hitting the floor. And I'm having trouble breathing because it takes my breath away. It's just crazy. Yeah, we will find out.
No.
All right, next up is Comic Geek Kev. You can read it.
All right. Hey, Extinction. Keeps doing this to us. I'm a big Kev. I can't read.
Is that Zedgens, maybe?
Zedgens with X Legends, yeah. Zedgens. Let's do Zedgens. Another great episode, and I can hardly believe they actually went with the removal of Wolverine's adamantium.
Oof.
Yes. We're all there. First, the not so great. The lack of a big Storm return was a real wasted opportunity. Great to see her back, of course, but when you have a character who is gone for so long, who was so loved and so powerful, you bring her back with a bang, not a whimper. Yeah. So, we're hoping for a little bit more of an epic Storm return than just appearing in the alley.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was a pretty sexy moment, but I don't know. She had a big scene with Forge. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was good. I think we were all, maybe me and him were waiting for her to, like, swoop into a battle and just, like, knock out everything.
And everybody's like, Storm! And she saves the day. Yeah.
Do another show him the forecast move.
Yeah.
So. Back to his email. But that's about all I could really say I wasn't happy with about this episode.
Okay.
I liked seeing everyone back in their old costumes, even Rogue and Magneto. Poor Kurt, never got a new outfit. Yeah, he's had a variation of his red, black, and white costume pretty much his entire time.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, it works.
Yeah.
And they just kind of make it slightly different, but it's always basically the same.
Right.
But I sure am glad that he seems to be a regular team member, at least for now. Such a great characterization.
Yep. He's fun.
I agree. Did anyone else expect to see Jean go full Phoenix when she was fighting Cable? I was waiting. I suppose it could still happen. But when she called out to Scott, I fully thought she was going to change. We keep seeing Dark Phoenix in the opening credit scene. There has to be a reason, right? Right?
Possibly.
Yeah, right? I'm saying Jean is going to Phoenix out next episode.
Okay.
If she doesn't, I will eat my words. But I'm fully expecting her to. And let's talk about Morph. Is he Omega level? If he can replicate anyone's power, how is he not? Is there a limit to how long he can be in another form? A limit to using those powers? Could he have EMP'd the whole planet like Magneto did?
Ooh.
And does he look as good in a banana hammock? Oh my gosh. He seems like they would be a threat, number one, to literally anyone who wasn't on their side. Am I missing something? Is he able to access things like psychic or psionic abilities? Or is it just the physical traits? I'm guessing Shadowcat has the answers.
And here we already talked about it a little bit, but maybe you could kind of flesh it out for him a bit more.
Shadowcat has a somewhat answer. Slightly still unclear as to how they're defining their powers in this, but the way I'm seeing it is that it can take on the physical traits. So I wouldn't be able to see Morph being able to have the psychic abilities or something like Magneto and EMPing the planet. I don't see that, but I do see taking on certain physical traits, like we were talking about with turning into Hulk. Like, doesn't have the gamma radiation, but I see having some of the physical strength and girth and things like that can be enhanced. Or with, like, Quicksilver, like, yeah, we saw have the speed that Quicksilver does, but I don't think they'd be able to hold that up for long or be able to have the same kind of impact that Quicksilver would. But I still think there's an aspect, definitely, of physical traits that Morph can possess when shapeshifted into another character.
He's more like a mimic. He can mimic things, but not have the full power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, those are my answers. Comic Geek Kev. I hope they are satisfactory.
Can we address the kind of weird, uncomfortable elephant in the room with Morph, though? Because I saw in one of those X-Men posts, someone was complaining about why we're calling Morph a them and a they now, when in the original series it was clearly a he, it was a guy that we lost as Morph. So where did the change happen, and what's going on with that? What's the story behind all that?
Yeah, so I think, part of it is, more modern contemporary aspects of looking at individuality, identity, things of that nature, but also the shape-shifting ability, because as a shapeshifter can turn into male, female, anything of that. So there might be, a comfortableness with, being okay with being addressed as them or both a he, she. So, I mean, and I think because yes, it's set in the 90s, so they're not necessarily using as much terminology as we have now in this sense. But I think they're still trying to be able to work into those identity aspects. Because, I've said before, like, X-Men work really well in a queer metaphor kind of a sense. And so that is part of some queer identities, is using they, them instead of necessarily she, her. And I know that that's not a thing that everybody is comfortable with or likes, but from my perspective, it's very much part of who people can be or would choose to want to represent. And I think the shape-shifting aspects throughout like literature and a lot of literary studies, shapeshifters or some people of that nature that can morph or change into different things or have different, like aliens. There's a lot of aliens that kind of use that they, them, non-binary terms also as well. So it does help people find that also, again, seeing yourself in a character or having that something to relate to. So I think they're trying to it's working more of that into this series, just because, while it's made in contemporary times, it still is also, like, the show itself is set in the 90s.
Because they haven't actually, on the show itself, they haven't actually addressed morph as a they, them, or he or her. It's just always been morph. Hey, morph, do this. Hey, morph, do that. They've never actually tackled that per se.
Not outwardly.
Yeah,
there's been a couple times that they have used, like, them. But it's been like one or two. It's like been one or two twice. It's mostly they've just said morph.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know it can be a touchy subject with certain people. Like, I'm perfectly fine with it.
I was just wondering, because this other fan was like, he was clearly a guy in the original series, so why is it changed now? Like, so, it's just one of those people being a bit of a dink about it.
Yeah, but, and, updating it for more modern languages and what we have now, and just, there was still that in the 90s, but not nearly as, an outward presence in society as we have now, and having that different language to talk about it.
Okay, cool. We don't need to make it a big drama thing on our show. I just was curious because it does.
Yeah, it's good to talk about it. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Especially for any listeners that kind of are in that camp or like me, or kind of are queer, and talk about those things. So
yeah, and because just don't be offended if we say he or she instead of them or they by accident, or like in the email we're reading, he's being addressed as a he. Like, don't be offended by that. It's just something we got to get used to, or people make mistakes. Whatever. It's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
No offense intended at all.
All right, and back to the email.
Okay.
So I know some people didn't want Magneto to go bad again. I think we were both said that. And I'm not sure this is in quotes, bad as opposed to pissed. Yeah. The shut up moment to Charles was pretty great. Didn't think I'd ever see that. And when he got the helmet off, I thought he was done. Such great scenes. The action, the dialogue, all of it was just so well done.
I know. Epic.
I was never much of a fan of Forge in the comics. My opinion is no different here. I'm not sure what it is, but he's never been particularly compelling to me.
Yeah, he is a little bit on the boring side to me, but he's been okay on the show here. I haven't minded him at all.
Yeah, first would be cool. I know we've had our complaints about how they've handled, like, the life-death aspects of the storylines, and there wasn't as much time to spend there.
Yeah.
But yeah, not a favorite, but like I think Forge is cool. But yeah, every person's gonna have their fan favorites and not fan favorites. So all good. Overall, the big battle scene towards the end was fantastic. You could almost feel the power clash between Jean and Cable, and the Sunspot Jubilee fight, while too brief, was visually impressive. Although, when I said I wanted more Sunspot, I didn't want him to be fighting Jubilee. The upgrade to the animation, while still keeping the basic style, is impressive. I can't wait for the season finale. I'm giving this one 9.9 out of 10 big shut-ups. Till next time, Comic Geek Kev.
I guess that's the one point we didn't highlight too, is when Sunspot was facing Jubilee, like she's trying to attack Magneto, and he hits her from behind, and he's like, "Oh my god, I'm sorry, Jubilee. Are you okay? Are you okay?" And she turns around and smacks him right back again. I was like, "Oh man." So he's like, he put himself in a tough spot. I don't think he wants to fight his friends, but he agrees with Magneto.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were definitely both kind of hesitantly fighting each other, I think, being a little more careful.
All right, thanks, Kev. Last up is JJJ. Triple J here with the penultimate episode feedback, 10 out of 10 episode. I have a few things. Number one, I'm going to start skipping the intros because whoever does them, they're in for a world of hurt or worse. Why did Scott put Logan on the Battle Magneto team? Terrible idea.
To get to the end point.
Yeah. Why did Scott put Techno Cable on the Battle Bastion team? Terrible idea. Number two. We're obviously getting... What's that?
I said again, to put them in the positions that the story wanted them to be in.
Yep. We're obviously getting Phoenix in the finale. Oh, he's with you on that.
Yep.
Number 5, Onslaught is coming. He's up there with you in the knowledge. You too. Number 6. So, was Xavier going to kill Magneto before Scott intervened? The plan was to control Magneto and fix the Earth. But Scott was like, it's too soon because they hadn't taken down Bastion. Fine, but that didn't mean Scott had to stop the Professor from taking over Magneto. The Professor could have taken control and simply waited on the team to stop Bastion. I think the Professor was going to kill Magneto, and that's why Scott intervened. What do y'all think?
Yeah, so
That's why I asked, what is he doing there? Mm-hmm. What's happening?
Yeah, I mentioned that, and I think while we were talking about, like, he was waiting for Gold Team, or he said, like, hey, Gold Team hasn't finished, we gotta wait. But I think there is that kind of next level of Scott seeing what Xavier was doing, and is like, I can't let him go that far. I can't let this happen. So I do think there was a part of Xavier in there that while he was going to control Magneto, like, we saw how much pain that was causing him, and so I think that act could have killed Magneto in the process.
And that's why I was trying to bring up, like, what exactly he's doing, because it truly looked like he was being electrocuted from the inside out. So I think there was something more happening there, and Xavier saying, I'm sorry, it's come to this, Magnus. Maybe he was going to kill him there, but to me, it's hard to say, like, Xavier resorting to killing his essentially adoptive brother. I just can't see Xavier going that far. I don't know. That's a big question mark there.
We'll see.
We need to get in touch with the show's writers and ask them what they intended by that.
Yeah. Or I don't know, could get an answer next episode, depending on what happens.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, JJJ finishes off. Anyway, can't wait for the finale, y'all. This is Triple H, hopefully sneaking in under the deadline and still searching for the wall-crawling menace. I'm out. Well, JJJ, you got this email in like 2.5 hours into our podcast. Luckily, I saw it pop up and I had to pause the episode, which you'll never notice, just to get your email in here. So, I've been harassing him on Facebook. I sent him a message. Where's your email? Come on. Expect to hear from you on this finale. As for the rest of you, if you would like to get your thoughts in for X-Men finale of Season 1, you got one last chance. That's next week. We have now shifted our recording times to Saturday evenings, so you have an extra couple days. Instead of Thursday, you now have till Saturday to get your feedback in. Gives you a little bit more time to watch the show, absorb it, recuperate from why no one's coming is going to be insane. Get us your feedback. And this is how you do that.
If you would like to be a part of the show, you can send in your feedback to tomorrowslegendspodcast@gmail.com. You can also reach us on Twitter @tomorrowslegends. We'd love you to join our Facebook page at facebook.com/groups/tomorrowslegends and become part of the community.
Oof. We're like treading on Mandalore territory here.
That's what I was going to ask. I was like...
3.5 hours for a half an hour show.
Yeah, well, I mean, this was a long conversation, but a good conversation because there was a lot to talk about here.
It's all your fault. That's all.
It is my fault. Yeah.
I set you up by asking you the big questions, and then you got a whole whack ton of info for us. So
that's fine. Yeah. And then I come in with like theories that may or may not hold any water, but gotta get them out there just in case.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, exactly. That's what we're here for, and I think that's what the fans like. So good discussion. A lot of fun. I am excited and equally concerned about the finale.
Yes, I would say that. And then I'm also concerned about, is there going to be a cliffhanger at the very end, and then we're going to have to wait a year until we get any answers?
Yeah, because we have no idea when season 2 is coming. We have no idea.
Yeah, there's no normal schedules anymore in this streaming world. So
no, there's not.
We don't know.
But who is dead? Who is alive? Who else might die in the finale? Like it's scary, really, really scary.
Yeah.
I don't know, guys, but we hope you're along for the ride, and we hope to hear from you and get your thoughts in, and just let us know where you're sitting at. Like, where are your emotions at? How is this affecting you? What hurts you the most? Like, when these characters are disappearing, how bad is that hitting you?
Yeah.
Who are you scared to lose?
Are you watching these in the morning like I am and then trying to go to work? Thinking about them?
Ruining your entire day?
Yes. That's what I did. When I watched Remember It, I was like, I shouldn't have watched that before I went to work.
Oh my God. And
I was crying again about Gambit in my office.
I watched this one at lunchtime, and I'm just in the lunchroom completely absorbed in it. People are coming in to talk to me. I'm like, shut up! It's my lunchtime! Leave me alone! I'm all mad at them. So... yes, it's insane. It's insane. This show is it's blowing me away with where they're going and the type of stories they're telling and what they're willing to do. This is definitely not X-Men 92. This is a whole new level.
Yes.
All right, guys. Well, that is it. Everybody have a good rest of your weekend. We'll be talking to you soon. This is Havoc signing off with fear in my heart.
And I may not have all my computer gear anymore, but at least I survived the experience, and I hope you did too. I'm Shadowcat.
Well said, well said.
Tomorrow's Legends is not affiliated with CBS, Warner Brothers, HBO, or the CW. We're a fan-made podcast for entertainment purposes only and are part of the Cybercast Network. Be sure to check out our partner shows, The Mandalore and Dive into DC, covering your favorite Star Wars and DC Comics properties. Thanks for listening.